Please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Is Chaplain Sam Mercado here? He did not make it, so therefore let's do silent invocation, please.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You call the roll.
Councilman Ford?
Here.
Councilman Tremont?
Here.
Councilman Bastian?
Here.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Here.
Mayor Burnett?
Here. Alan, did you have something to tell us about as far as enhanced listening?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to announce that we do have assisted listening devices outside of the council chambers for any meeting. So if anybody needs one of those devices, they are located right outside this main door, and they can be used for the duration of the meeting and then placed back in the bins there. So just want to let everybody know, and I'd like to thank IT for getting that together.
All right.
Thank you.
Public comments on consent agenda items only. There being none, item 5, agenda approval.
Move to approve the consent agenda, or the agenda.
Second.
Items 6, 7, 8, and 9 on the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second for approval. Call the roll.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Tremont?
Yes.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes. Which brings us all the way to citizen participation. Jack, Jerry, and Terry, you're all here to speak about agenda items, things that are on the agenda. If you want to speak now, you can, but you might want to wait till the agenda item comes up, and I'll be more than glad to hear you at that time while it's attached to that conversation. Is that okay? Okay, when we get to 21, I'll give you a chance to speak, whatever the particular item is. With that, council comments. Start with you, Chase.
You know, I don't have anything tonight, Mayor. I think we'll have a long discussion later on some other stuff, so I'm good tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bob?
I'm on a quota of things I can discuss. I'm saving it for later.
Scott?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, Mayor, that I wanted to bring to the rest of council's attention. Robin's got a couple of pictures that she's going to pull up, but I wanted to let the rest of council know that I've been having some conversations with the city manager and the city attorney and their staff with some concerns that seem to be growing around the city with regard to aggressive soliciting, also development of campsites on private properties, and some other issues. And what I've asked the city manager and the city attorney to look into is a couple of things. One, for our own in-house staff and our employees, to make sure that they have the tools and they are prepared to address those issues, and if that involves some retraining or just some, bringing some of those codes and ordinances to light and making sure everybody understands them. And so they're working on that. In addition, one of the things I'd really like to see, and I think maybe, Margaret, this may be something with your staff and yourself, is I'd like to see us reaching out to our business partners in the community, as well as our property management groups for like some of our strip malls and plazas and things like that. And I want to make sure that we are reaching out to them and letting them know how they can help us help them. I'm starting to hear a pattern of aggressive solicitors coming onto these properties and people saying, well, there's nothing we can do or nothing can be done, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. We're also seeing, or at least I think we're seeing, an increase in shopping carts just ending up miles away from some of these locations, and they're being used for all kinds of stuff. They're creating campsites. Thank you, Robin. Here's a couple of images just to kind of give you an idea. This was over in Countryside, and one of the images here, that you can count right there, there is 11 different shopping carts that have been taken off property, abandoned into the woods, and who knows what all that stuff is in there, but they're creating dump sites and camps, and just this is unsightly, getting out of control. So just something we need to look at and see what needs to be done. Reach out to these private property owners and property managers, and let them know how they can help us to help them, type of thing. So anyhow, I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention to let you know I've been having those conversations, and that the city manager's staff as well as the city attorney staff, they are working on that stuff. Next item, I just wanted to...
Before you move on
Go
from
ahead.
that, because I had a similar question from the city manager's report last weekend, and Matt Jones responded to that. So there, we do have some policies in place, and I agree with you. I think they need to be enforced as aggressively as possible. But even from our end of it, I wholeheartedly agree. It can't be just us. We need to help with the property owners, because private property owners have private property rights that we can help enforce
Correct.
a lot more readily than some of the things that we're able to do right now.
Right. And I think a lot of these issues are maybe issues that are relatively new in scope to our city, that seem to be growing a little bit. So some of the property owners and business owners may have never dealt with stuff like this before. So helping educate them as to how they can help themselves and allow us to help them, I think will go a long way to maintaining the quality of life that we have in the city, for sure.
Your next thing?
Yeah.
Scott,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just before
No,
we
jump
move
in
on,
there.
just want to express my solidarity and that, and my support. You know, I've spoken to a lot of business owners, a lot of drive-through, fast food restaurants, and their attendees get approached in a lot of their cars even. We've had some churches over there at off of near Rose Bay that have camps with folks over there near the what is it, the liquor store over there. I'd like to ask Margaret. I should have educated myself further, but St. Augustine recently looked to be approaching with some innovative ways to deal with that. I'd like to look into some of their laws and what they're doing, and any other cities that's effectively attacking this issue. Port Orange needs to be out front on this.
We got a big agenda.
I got it. Mayor, the second thing, I just wanted to publicly congratulate one of our residents, Jenny Ensland, yesterday. Participated as the only resident from the city of Port Orange in the Boston Marathon, which completing a marathon is quite the accomplishment of its own. But to do it in yesterday's conditions,
In the snow.
Snow and sleet.
snow at the starting line, sleet, it pretty much stayed around 30, 31 degrees the entire race. I saw that there were reports of headwinds that were near 30 miles an hour at point. She ran the last 11 miles. She had to grab a garbage bag along the road and ran the last 11 miles with a garbage bag because she felt like she was starting to have a little bit of hypothermia. But she finished that Boston Marathon yesterday in just over 4 hours. First time ever for her doing that, and I just think that's an incredible accomplishment. And she is somebody in our community that has always been there when we have reached out, and as a council we've reached out from time to time, and she has served on boards, and just an outstanding story. So congratulations to Jenny.
Good for her.
She is on her way back from Boston, her and her family, so I wish them safe travels and great accomplishment. That's all I got.
Okay.
Hopefully she's nice and warm now. With tonight's agenda, I'll stay quiet.
Okay. Well, I've got a handful of things. I appreciate you guys allowing me the time. First of all, just wanted to remind everybody that this weekend is Jazz Fest. It's Friday and Saturday here at City Center. Got a lot of high schools, colleges, military bands. The Marine Corps band, I believe, is coming again this year. They absolutely knock it out of the park, but it is a wonderful, wonderful event, and we invite everybody out to City Center this weekend to come check that out. Sunday is Earth Day, and we are having an Earth Day celebration at Riverwalk Park. So from 9 to 2, you can get more details about that on the website. Just want to remind everybody also, because I'm not sure we meet again before then, but Riverfest is coming up. The first annual Riverfest, a combination of Rotary, the Chamber, and the city working to do that event in Riverwalk Park. And that starts the weekend of May 4th through the 6th. My kids call it Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Be with you. Yeah, I know, but it works. So remind everybody about Riverfest. So we've got a lot of activities going along in the city. Ponce Inlet, I won't read the letter to you because it was extensive, but as you all know, Ponce's law was passed by the legislature, and it was an extensive effort on parts of a lot of people, and one of the things we were asked to do was pass a resolution of support and lend our voice to it. And because of that, Mayor Gary Smith of Ponce Inlet sent a letter of appreciation and thanks. So that certainly was a team effort in so many ways. So want to give credit where credit is due to them. They really made a difference on that one. Also, I'm handling this such that we're going to need some glass cleaner on it. But recently, the Florida Planning and Zoning Association did their state awards, and Sustainability Award went to the City of Port Orange and Dredging and Marine Consultants for the design and construction of Riverwalk Park.
Nice.
So that is a very nice feather in the cap of the city. A lot of people worked on that in a lot of different ways over the years, and as a lot of people know, many years ago that was kind of a rundown trailer park, and talk about reinventing yourself in a big way. I think we can all be very proud of that.
Good deal.
Also want to mention this Friday is Student Government Day. The juniors of the Law and Government Academy at Atlantic High School will be with us on Friday, and Friday morning at 8:30 they get together here in council chambers. At 9 o'clock they're going to have a mock council meeting. So if anybody can be here to help greet them, I will be here to greet them. But it's a terrific opportunity for these kids, and they take it very seriously as they have in years past. So I'm looking forward to that. So a lot of things going on. Mark your calendars. And with that, special awards reports, recognition, proclamation. Item 11, report from Kemper Sports on Cypress Head Golf Course.
Good evening. Members of the City Council, Mr. Assistant City Manager, Mr. Mayor. Bob Duquette from Cypress Head Golf Course, General Manager. The report for this one is actually for the month of February, and regarding the Cypress Head Golf Club. Our overall revenues for February finished higher than our projected budget. And this was a result, of course, of a much better weather pattern. Our range revenue was higher also compared to our budget amount. And our payroll itself was lower than our projected amount for a savings of $7,900. And most of this is controlling just labor costs during the course of the month itself. Our operating expenses finished at $45,421 versus a budgeted amount of $48,507. And part of that has to do with some timing of invoices, which will probably come due in March. The month of February is our 5th month fiscal year for 2017-2018, and our revenues for year-to-date are slightly under in terms of the budgeted amount, mostly due to the losses that we sustained in January due to the really bad weather, as everybody probably doesn't remember anymore, all the frost. Everything else, payroll and operating expenses, are definitely both lower than our projected budget all the way for the course of year-to-date. And with savings and payrolls and operating, we're ahead of budget right now by about $63,000, despite the losses that we had in January. The revenues for the restaurant were not realized for February. A new owner-operator, Kevin Hanna, is now called at Flagsticks and has established, he began his restaurant operations on April 2nd. And it's right now everything looks like it's working very good. Apparently the chicken fried steak is making a big come. Very enjoyable process, as well as the chicken pot pies.
He's open for dinner too, isn't he?
He is open for dinner, open for breakfast. He's been very helpful. We've been working together good as a team right now at this point, and he's very enthusiastic, and from what I hear tell, the food has been really good. I know a lot of people have also come over to check it out, and the burgers, I guess, are really good. So we're looking forward to it.
Burgers are great.
That's what I hear tell. So the T-sheet activity for the month of February, we had 5,398 total rounds, which broke down to 4,237 paid, 936 annuals, and 225 other rounds. Broke down to 4,056 18-hole rounds and 1,086 9-hole rounds. In terms of course and grounds, our weather throughout the month of February was definitely much more accommodating than we had in January. Fertilizers were applied, putting services, mold cricket, spot applications, and certainly a program to control their weeds around the specific areas all through the course. Our repairs are required for our main irrigation pump located at hole number 8, and that's the one that controls the irrigation for reclaimed water sources. New merchandise in the golf shop. We just had a Callaway demo day today, which was a very big hit. We've made in February $1,289 in gift cards and $7,300 in pro shop sales. I've got a new assistant, Mr. Mike Dick, who's a former PGA professional, still is, he's just retired, but he's come down to help us out. Programs for juniors as well as men's and ladies clinics, and that's been well received by many people. Reggie Hunter, who's our sales and marketing director, is continuing to book tournaments throughout the course of the 2018 and into already 2019 season. In February, we were a drop-off, official school supply drop-off location for Horizon School. As you probably all remember, that school was damaged, had a lot of vandalism, and there was a tournament that we did host at that point for the golfing community, and everybody was very generous. We were able to raise $4,000 for the school. Our Mindshare reviews and comments, we send out 400 questionnaires. Our overall rating for the course was a 9.1. Our recommended rating is 9.4, and our service is at 9.8. Kemper Sports, of course, we always have a lot of corporate support. They have a lot of monthly webinars which we share practices with other golf courses within the Kemper property in the portfolio. Our entire team is dedicated to being able to serve the needs of our community, and with daylight savings in March, we started our summer leagues. So we've got leagues on 2 nights right now, really well attended. Chamber and quite a few other groups that are playing with us. And in March, we actually we hosted the Spruce Creek Academy of Finance. So that would be my report, Ms. Mayor. Any questions?
Comments? Chase, anything?
No comment. I did enjoy Flag Sticks the other day.
Oh, yes.
I went after dinner, so I only had a soup, but it was still excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's been
Bob?
a good addition.
Yeah, very good.
No? Scott?
I'm good.
Drew?
Nothing. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, boy, I tell you what, I'm writing smaller or with my notes. One of the things that we talked about, you want to really mess me up? No, I think I'm just writing smaller. That's
Okay.
One of the things we
Yeah.
talked about when the golf board was here was things that we could do maybe to enhance pro shop revenue. Now that you're out of the restaurant business and
Yeah.
back in the golf business, I think one of the things we want to task you with is, I know that it's never going to be Dick's Sporting Goods or anything like that. We are what we are, but
Yep.
if you can take a look, and if there are some, I don't know, I don't want to use the word risk, but investments that you think that we can make with inventory on a small scale that can help enhance the pro shop. Certainly like you to do that and report back to us next month on
Yep,
what you
absolutely.
got on that.
And one of the things that we actually added, like again today, we held a demo day with Callaway's with their product, and surprisingly enough, I had a gentleman that bought an $850 golf club, one club, not a set, just a one club. So
Did you tell him he needs 13 more?
he does. And that is one of the things that we're going to try to do to increase some of the revenues for the pro shop itself. And actually, it was so successful that Callaway wants to come back and do it again in August and stuff at this
And
point.
I think those event type things are good for the golfing community out
Absolutely.
there as well.
We had well over 100 people that attended today just to hit the new clubs that they do have. So there's a lot of other sales that'll be attached to that, but also just upgrading some of the materials, some of the merchandise, the aspects that we have in our golf shop. Absolutely.
I'm thinking about how many car payments that is.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you.
Well, it's that time of year again. Item 12, actuarial report from Patrick Donlin of the Fire Pension Plan. Good to see you.
How are you, Patrick?
The fire ones are there, and then this.
You're here to
yeah,
give
so I'm
us
not sure if
good
this will work
news.
or not.
I do have good news.
That's what we want.
I was told not to bore you guys too much tonight, so I'll only go over 3 pages, I think, in this long report here. But as you know, every year, as of October 1st, we look at the assets in the pension plan, and then we project out all the future retirement benefits to determine an appropriate funding requirement for the next year. And so we produced this valuation report, and so for this year, like you said, the funding requirements went down. And when we did the report as of 10/1/16, the required city contribution was 90% of payroll. And when we did the 10/1/17, it dropped to 81.2% of payroll. So there was a nice reduction in the city's funding requirements during the year. And then I'm going to go to the most complicated page. Maybe I'll regret it, but we have this unfunded actuarial accrued liability, which is kind of like your mortgage on the pension plan. And it's really split up into a bunch of different little mortgages. And so, like you can see here, that there was a loss in 2008. And so the outstanding principal is $210,422. And so we're going to make a payment next year of $210,422. There's only 1 year left on that. So that's really what happened this year, is that 2002 mortgage payment was paid off. That's the main reason that the funding requirements went down. And you're going to have that happen again next year, because we're going to drop off the $210,000 payment. And then you're going to have it the following year, because the 2009 loss, which is a $168,000 payment. So basically, over the next 2 years, the funding requirements are going to drop by about $400,000 for the city, just because of paying off these prior mortgages, so to speak. More good news is the city has to put a liability on their balance sheet each year for the pension plan. That started a couple of years ago. And so last year the liability was $17,752,000, and then this year it's $16,893,000. So it improved by about $800,000. And that was because we had a strong investment return for fiscal 2017. The return was 10.11%, and we're only expecting, at that time we were expecting 7.7%.
What's this year's assumed rate?
We're changing it to 7.6%. So what we did is we were at, now I'll skip to the one page. So basically, if you look there on the right-hand side is the assumptions that the plan was using. And so in 2009 or 2010, the plan was using an expectation of 8.5% interest every year. And they were using the 1983 mortality table for their assumption. And so in 2011, we changed it from 8.5% down to 8%. And we upped the mortality from the 1983 to the 2000. And then you can see in 2014, we started to change it again. So we're going from 8% to 7.5% over a 5-year period. So this year we went from 7.7 to 7.6, and then next year we'll go to 7.5. And that was the goal of the board 5 years ago or 4 years ago. I don't know if they'll continue that trend, but for now it's going from 8 to 7.5. And then FRS mortality there was another big change, because the state mandated that all plans have to use the same mortality assumption. And FRS, they have to use the same as FRS. And FRS is conservatively assuming that people are going to live longer and longer and longer. So that became a more conservative assumption as well. So even with these conservative assumption changes, you can see we went from $21 million unfunded in 2010 to $17 million today. And those assumption changes are $5.8 million. So if we wouldn't have made those assumption changes, that top line would be about $11.2 million unfunded. So we've made more conservative assumptions, and we've still improved the unfunded actuarial accrued liability. So those were kind of the highlights that I wanted to go over, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Those are actual highlights. Questions, Drew?
No real questions. I mean, you can see basically from about 2010-11 where we're definitely moving in the right direction as far as the funded ratio. And so, you know, this year's a little rougher on the stock market so far, but there's plenty of time to recover that. So it definitely, you know, being over 62% funded from where it was in 10 at 42%, that's huge. I mean, that's a, you know, that's big. So hopefully it'll keep going in the right trending and still moving in the right direction for many years to come.
Right.
Scott? No. This is your board, isn't it?
Yeah. Been a good board. I think part of what's occurring here is, well, two things have occurred. Council took really significant steps in conjunction with the fire union to reduce pension costs. And that, of course, made a big difference. In addition, we've taken a much more conservative and more conservative on our estimates, and we've been extremely, the board has been extremely active in making sure we get the best investment advice. And we've, in fact, almost on a yearly basis, we've changed investment companies when we felt they were not meeting the criteria. As a result, the investments have been fine. Big hill to climb, though, because we were well behind the ball a couple of years ago. We are improving significantly, and this recent uptick in the market has been wonderful. However, I don't think anyone expects it to continue, at least not at that aggressive level. So I think we're doing well. I have a much better feel for the pension situation right now, but eternal vigilance is needed because, you know, we have another economic downturn, and our pension successes and failures are very much related on return on investment. So, you know, I'm hopeful now, and I think we're moving forward. We're always keeping our eye on the ball, though, so we don't go back the way we were.
Taking a look at those 2010 numbers when you and I first came on council.
Depressing.
That's very depressing, but man, we're not there yet, but we've come a long way. We've come a long way. Chase?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it gets shorter and shorter the more you bring good news. And quite frankly,
Yeah, I mean, I can
this
talk
is
longer, but
oh, I know you can. You've proven it.
We've known that.
But I tell you what, even for a short presentation, this is just so important. So we're really glad you have you in front of us.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Mayor?
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it, Patrick.
Mayor? Just one thing before you move on. I noticed that the report itself wasn't attached to the agenda item, but we do have that, and we'll send it to you guys,
Okay.
and we can put it on no. What?
Yeah, I know the investment.
Yeah, we had the annual report
Right,
and all the
not-
things. We didn't have the actuarial or
Right.
year report.
Yeah, I apologize. I just sent it yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrick.
Any comments on that from the public? There being none, moving on to the actuarial report. Why is that such a hard word for me? From Chad Little for the police pension plan.
So Chad Little with Fromm and Little Actuaries, and I will also be brief here.
You need the mayor's glasses?
No, I'm
talking
still
about?
at
You
the
had to
point where
explain that. You
I'm
walked
taking
up with
them off.
glasses, you took them off, and you stuck your.
I don't
got a
need
lot
glasses,
closer.
I just need to write larger, that's all.
This is just so I can
Yeah.
see you guys.
Okay, beautiful.
So, I will be brief with this, and thankfully, going after Patrick, he did a good job explaining what our role is to come up with the minimum required contribution based on.
Is that why you let him go first?
Yes. So, just to remind you, and this is a little bit of restatement of what he said, but the required contribution is made up of two pieces: the cost of everybody adding another year of service and moving forward, what we call the normal cost. The other piece is this amortization of the unfunded that Patrick talked about as well. And that's really been the driver here for a while. After the market downturn, the unfunded liability had gotten to a point where the mortgage payment on that liability was really driving how much the required contributions were going to be. So in our situation, what derives that is the funded percentage, the comparison of the unfunded liability. It's the assets we've accrued so far versus the liability we've accrued so far. So looking back historically on the police fund, you can see that back in '01, and that's just as far back as the records I have go, the funded percentage was 65%. It bottomed out around 43%. That was in '06, which is actually when we came on board. Since then, through investment returns, contributions made by the city, adjustments made in the payments and benefits, and changes to the assumptions, the funded percentage is now up to 72%. So that's good. It went up from last year to this year as well. And the asset return this year, I believe we were also in that 10% range. I can check that, but so it was another good year investment-wise. Yes, we were at exactly 10% for the last year. So. So it has been moving in the right direction, closing down that unfunded liability. The net result, when we get to the actual contribution that's required, you can see in the top section there, the third line down is the estimated minimum required city contribution. The reason it's estimated is because we don't know how much the check from the state is going to be. It might change at some point during the year. So with that estimation, for the fiscal year that's going on now, it was estimated at 2.8 million, and next year it'll be estimated at 2.8 million. So it has leveled off. And in addition to that, if you'll see at the bottom of the page, the assumed rate of return in the police plan was dropped from 7.55 down to 7.45, 7.45%. The board's long-term goal being at this point to get down to 7.25, and then we'll be reassessing to look at potentially maybe even lowering that further. As we learn things over the next several years and continue to drop that number. So that's where we are. Funding percentage went from 69 to 71%. The required contribution as a dollar amount is essentially stayed the same, but as a percent of pay, that's percent of the members who are not in the drop, it's projected to have gone down from about 65% of pay down to about 58% of pay. So that's also a nice decrease there. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. This is your committee, isn't it?
It is.
Let's start with you.
All right. Again, definitely going in the right direction, up over 70%. It's come a long way from around that 2000, well, from that low point in what, 5 or 6, where it was 43 whatever percent. You know, there were a lot of changes made. We changed advisors and monitors and things, and it continues to do fairly well. And if we can, you know, barring any crashes in the market, with the assumed rate of return lowering slowly every year, you know, that's helping keep it viable. And so I'm happy that it's going, you know, where it is, and that it's obviously again trending in a direction that we like.
Scott? Bob?
Yeah. I'm glad to see the police department has had it a little bit better, but it's a much larger department, so making up the deficit. And I think everyone in the audience needs to understand the tremendous drag these pension situations have put on our budgets. And again, it's no one up here's fault. Something got in the water between 2000 and 2010, and things were allowed to progress in a very negative direction with the pensions. We've been trying to make it up, and it's been really hard because you're talking here compared to the state public safety pension, which is around 23%. We're paying anywhere between, at one point as high as 110% of salaries in one of the departments, and probably in the 80s and 90s in another. So that's a huge budget. It's almost like having two departments to have to fund an extra department. So it's been a long, hard push. It still is higher than I hope it'll be, than it should be. But in the future, as we gradually bring it down, it'll become less of a burden, allowing us more flexibility with our budgeting and an ability to do some additional things that we simply can't do now with this type of, trying to fund this type of shortfall.
Chase?
Like,
Well, these are easier and easier to do when we've had good years, but regardless, these are of vital importance. So dragging you out here to give a good report, I think is important, just as important as dragging you out here to find out what went wrong. So I appreciate you coming out here, Chad.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, I know you're hovering. Citizen Advisory Committee for TPO, Bobby Ball. Usually he's springing up right before I can announce it, and he's already at the podium.
Bobby Ball with the CAC for the TPO. We had our monthly advisory committee meeting, and a couple of items briefly were the 2-year plan TIP and our 2-year work program and the 5-year TIP. Recommended some adjustments to come before the board. We also are going to kick off on April 30th is the Tell the TPO survey. So we want to encourage everybody to take the survey, give us your input on the transportation needs of your community and the county, and we want to hear from you. And then the last item was a discussion item for a future presentation by Holly Hill. They want to bundle some of their projects as they get them ranked and prioritized. And so I was talking to Tim about that, and maybe there's a way to strategize to get the city of Port Orange to have some of their projects moved up on the list in some of those cases. So
Excellent.
With that, that's all I've got tonight.
The survey, make
It's-
sure Jake gets that so we can post
do
the
that.
link on the city website and on
You got it.
social media.
Okay.
Questions for Bobby?
That was
No,
gonna be mine.
thank you, sir.
Sorry.
I was just curious how the survey was gonna work, but it'll be a online survey. Yeah.
Actually, there's many forms online. I think you can get paper copies. They want to get
Okay.
get information from you. So
Great.
Many ways.
That's excellent.
That's important.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby.
Well, I tell you what, if the rest of this meeting goes like this,
Doing
It'll
good.
slow.
we know better. We all know better, right? Which brings us to item 15, second reading of ordinance number 2018-14.
18-4.
2018-4. Boy, you know what, hold on here a second. Because
Can you make
ordinance
his-
number 2018-4 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Section 54-79A relating to the Fire Pension Fund Board of Trustees' term of office, providing for staggered terms of 4 years for each trustee, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance 2018-4.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Council comments?
No, none on second reading.
No, we pretty much hashed out all the reasons why we thought this was a good idea. Anyone in public like to speak to this one? If not, call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. Item 16 is a special exception to allow off-site parking at 708 Orange Avenue for an office at 301 Dunlawton Avenue in the River District. May I have a motion for approval as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Penny, it's all yours.
Penelope Cruz, planner. Get that graphic up. Good evening. So this special exception is to request a portion of the First United Methodist Church parking lot to be used as off-site parking for professional office located at 301 Dunlawton Avenue. The site plan for the office expansion that's proposed at 301 Dunlawton Avenue has been submitted and it's under review by staff. As part of that site plan, a sidewalk is required to connect the proposed off-site parking to the office site. The proposed building expansion would basically require the site at 301 Dunlawton to have 17 parking spaces, and based on the size and configuration of that lot, only 9 are able to be provided at that site. So they're asking for 8 of those parking spaces to be provided at the church parking lot. And the church is a party to this agreement as well. We have received we've received the perpetual easement that will maintain that as off-site parking ongoing into the future. That's been reviewed and approved by the city attorney's office. The special exception has been reviewed, and it meets all the standard development requirements for all special exceptions, as well as those specific to off-site parking. So staff is recommending approval, subject to the sidewalk being installed.
Is the applicant here with us this evening?
Yes, sir.
Can we have him come up, please, and introduce himself? He's an attorney, so if you want to grill him, I know he can take it.
Ray Donadio, Sheffield Loman Attorneys and Advisors.
So you're looking to make an investment by improving your property in the River District of Port Orange.
That is correct.
You promise to be a good neighbor to that church.
Always have, always will be.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Questions for the applicant?
No, I don't have any.
Scott?
No.
I have a question. City Attorney?
Yes.
I am a member of the church that's in question. Is that a conflict of interest?
No, sir.
No. Okay.
Good question. Chase?
No, always nice to see the community members work together to get a problem solved.
Neighbors helping neighbors
That's right.
in a very legal fashion. We appreciate you, Mr. Donadio.
Thank you.
And very important, brings additional taxable value to our town center,
Which needs it.
CRA, which needs it. As you know, at one of these times, we're going to probably break even.
You know, he may start a trend. We may have all sorts of large law offices down there by the river before we know it. For all the attorneys in the room that are sitting out there listening.
We'll have to
right
rename
now,
the
right?
district.
Yeah.
The legal district.
Anyone from the public like to
Legalese
speak to this? Council, any other further comments? Call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Steltner.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Congratulations, Ray. Take care of your neighbors. All right. First reading, ordinance number 2018-5. Definitely going to need a sip of this. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Land Development Code, amending Chapter 17, Section 29, to increase the percentage of planned community-agriculture workplace district allowed to be developed as multifamily, to amend the rear buffer requirements, to include language that if a landscape buffer provided is 50 foot wide or greater, then a berm and opaque fence is not required, and to reduce the minimum living area requirement for multifamily dwellings, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve ordinance number 2018-5.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second.
This is the one we wanted to speak on 17.
Okay, when I will ask for comment, and you're first up.
Penelope Cruz, planner. So I'm just going to start with some background, just because it's been a while since we looked at this. This planned community agriculture zoning area was adopted in 2002. It was the subject area in red. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor down here. That area was designated for commercial uses back then in 2002 as part of the workplace district of the PCA zoning. And prior to that, it was also designated for commercial as far back as 1998. So for over 20 years, it's been designated as commercial. In 2012, the PCA zoning district was amended to allow 7% of that district to be developed as multifamily. And thereafter, the White Palm Apartments submitted a site plan and developed a little over 27 acres of that property. basically taking up the majority of that 7%. There's only about 2.4 acres left for multifamily development. So the applicant's land development code amendment that's before you tonight, it includes 3 parts to it, and I'm going to go over each of those parts briefly. The first part is to increase the percentage of the workplace district that can be developed as multifamily, to amend the rear buffer requirement, and to reduce the minimum living area for a multifamily unit. If this code amendment is approved, the applicant plans on submitting a site plan for a multifamily complex, as well as that includes 2 commercial out parcels with access off Williamson Boulevard and Summer Trees Road. So the first part of the applicant's request is to increase the percentage of the district that can be developed as multifamily. The proposal basically moves that percentage from 7% of the area to 13%. That basically increases the area from approximately 29 acres to 54 acres, ultimately resulting in 1 additional site. So we've got the White Palm Apartments. If this were approved, it would allow 1 more multifamily site to be developed in the workplace district. The applicant has conducted a market study that shows the demand for this use over the commercial use that is currently allowed. Let me say multifamily is allowed. They're just trying to expand the amount of it. The applicant has also conducted a preliminary traffic study to evaluate the impacts of the proposed amendment on the area roadways, and that analysis shows the potential to reduce the net vehicular trips by a little over 2,700 trips when compared to the potential commercial development currently allowed on the property. Just want to note that a full detailed transportation concurrency review and any required mitigation would be assessed in more detail during an actual site plan review if this were to be approved. The second part of the applicant's request is to amend the rear buffer requirement. The applicant is proposing a 50 and 100-foot wide natural buffer with an aluminum picket fence. And you can see that in the green in the graphic here on the screen. The current buffer requirement for multifamily in the workplace district is 20 feet wide with a berm and a fence. The current buffer requirement for commercial development on the site would be 20-foot buffer with a fence. The third part of the applicant's request is to reduce the minimum living area required for a multifamily dwelling. And in the staff report, Table 1 showed a comparison of nearby cities, and what they're requesting is comparable to what the minimum living area is in nearby cities for multifamily. The applicant's market study also noted that the studio apartments have a higher demand occupancy rate and net growth rate, and I'll let them speak to that in their presentation a little bit more as well.
Can you expound on that a little bit?
Basically, they...
Some numbers?
Mm-hmm. So some of their units, our understanding is they'd want to have a few of their units be studio apartments, and the minimum living area right now that we have in our code is 600 square feet. So they would like to have the ability to go down a little bit less than that. At what they've showed us so far and at the Planning Commission, they said that their actual smallest unit that they are proposing at this point would be 550, but just to be safe with designs and things, they set it at 500 as a minimum living area. That would only be for the amount of units that would be studio apartments. They obviously have a mix of units, as most apartments do. The third part of the applicant's request, I'm sorry, I already went over that. So in summary, the LDC amendment has those 3 parts: the percentage to increase the amount that can be developed as multifamily, the amendment to the rear buffer requirement, and the minimum living area for a multifamily dwelling unit. If it's approved, they plan on submitting a site plan for a multifamily complex with 2 out parcels accessed off Williamson Boulevard as well as Summer Trees Road. If it's approved and they submit a site plan, the site plan review will include a detailed environmental analysis. It has a required review by St. Johns River Management District and permitting, review of the transportation impact analysis, as well as a transportation fair share agreement. Staff is recommending approval, and the applicant is here and has a presentation that they've prepared that may answer some of your questions. So if it's okay with the council, I'd like to open their presentation up.
Sure.
Okay.
That's what we want to hear. The facts and nothing but the facts.
I'm not able to get it.
Dang straight. Be sworn in or sworn out? Which do you want?
Probably a little bit of both.
You're welcome. Here you go.
LCR, Rob.
Council members, for the record, Rob Merrill with Cobb Cole Law Firm, 149 South Ridgewood in Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm here with sort of a double presentation. I have Chris Moore here with me from Continental, who's got the PowerPoint, so he gets the fancy stuff. I've got my notes that hopefully I can read. I wrote them real big, so I didn't have to use my glasses, Mayor.
Don might be able to see those from
and
there.
I'm probably going to get through them pretty quickly in light of the agenda that you guys have tonight. You know, Penny always does a great job, Tim, and your staff. They're some of the best in the business, and she's given you a great report both tonight and in your packet, which has a lot of detail in it. I don't want to dwell on, but if you have any questions about it, happy to answer any. I'm going to introduce a few people here that are with us. Chris Moore, who's standing up here with me, he's not my bodyguard, but he's going to be the second presenter tonight with the PowerPoint. Came all the way from Wisconsin, so he's here for Continental, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about his company, about what they've done elsewhere. I think it's good for you guys to sort of see their track record. They've actually had another project here in Port Orange. I'll let Chris get into that. We've also got Clay Whitfield from CBL. Also could be my bodyguard, I suppose. Luke from Zev Cohen's here, and Sands and Matt from Lassiter Transportation, and Debbie, my paralegals here. I think I probably have half of Zev Cohen's here that could just about address anything that you guys have questions about from an engineering or planning standpoint, including Mark. So with that, I think what I'm going to ask you guys to please do is take the recommendation from your Planning Commission, from your staff, take it seriously. I'll highlight a few things that I think come out of that I think will be relevant to you tonight. I hope you'll think about. The first of which is, you know, Penny talked about the 1,200 or so acres of the planned community that was done back in 2002. I think Sam Owens and the Crossy folks and some others were involved in that. Joel Ivey, I think, was the planner that worked on it. And it came up with a mixture of uses for that 1,200 acres, 400 and something of which is within this workplace district. And the mixture was, you know, it came up from a planning formula. Things have changed since 2002. One of them is the pavilion was developed. I mean, hurrah. Something great came to Port Orange, I think more so than most of the cities in the vicinity, and we're all happy for it. But it changed the landscape out there. It changed the marketplace. It changed a lot of things. And this proposal tonight is very simply to add a few more residential units in lieu of the commercial that's allowed now. The trade-off, if you will, is a great deal of commercial. If you look at the FAR, it's 1 million or so square feet of commercial that could theoretically be built on that piece of property versus 292 apartment units. So the orders of magnitude is pretty obvious in terms of the impacts of it, intensity of it, et cetera. And we've had a lot of discussion both at the Planning Commission and at our neighborhood meeting that we had about that. I think a lot of good conversation came out of that, and I think the council, I'm sure, is aware of a lot of the nuances that I won't get into. But certainly the idea that the residential can complement all these other uses, the employment opportunities that are out there, the commercial and entertainment, retail opportunities that are out there, the schools in the vicinity, this is the right place for this residential, or these guys wouldn't be here. He'll talk to you more about how he got to that point. I think that the planning concept that hopefully you'll keep in the forefront is, you know, when you look at the area with right across the street the pavilion and the intensity of what's there, and then right behind us the single family areas, the multifamily is the perfect transition. If you open a planner's handbook, that's what you're going to see. That is exactly what a planner would look at between single family and intense commercial, and that's what we're bringing to you here tonight. There's been some conversations about what the transportation impacts might be. This is a very common thing to be talked about in any proposal like this. If you think about it intuitively, I'll let these guys get you the detail if you need it, but intuitively, you're going from a situation where it could be an intense commercial development that certainly will draw from a much bigger area than on this side of the interstate. The issues that you're dealing with, I think presently, you all know, which is the interchange is clogged up. You got congestion out there. Commercial development, especially of that size, is going to draw from a bigger area, and it's going to affect that congestion. I think the residential does just the opposite. It allows complementary uses to be closer, shorter trips, more pedestrian trips, in a way that will actually help the situation. Goes without saying that no development is going to create less trips than some development, which this is some, but compared to what's allowed there now, I wanted you to think about that some. The last thing I'll mention to you, and Penny did mention it, is one of the components of the proposal tonight has to do with buffering. I went through the White Palm process with a group of single-family folks, 400 or so, at a neighborhood meeting, in our project coming forward with the apartments there, and I learned some lessons with that. And in this case, we had the ability to have a much larger natural buffer. In this case, between 50 and 100 feet of buffer. And so we went through the trouble of actually scientifically going through putting balloons up where the buildings would be, taking photographs from all angles, and that's presented in the presentation that's on the dais tonight. I won't go through that. Hopefully you've looked at it, and the conclusion you reach is that for the most part this is going to be very well screened with natural vegetation that we're not going to disturb. So I think that was brought out in our neighborhood meeting, brought out in the planning commission meeting. We talked about a great deal. So I'll answer any questions you have about that. Before I kick it to Chris to give you the pretty pictures, the one point that I would leave you with, if you're going to think about something, remember only this: 1 million square feet of commercial versus 292 residential units is what we're talking about here. Chris.
Thank you, Rob. I'm Chris Moore, Continental Properties, based out of Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, which is just west of Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Where the weather is what compared to here?
You don't want to know. We got about 10 inches of snow this past weekend.
Good Lord.
So welcome to opening day. Just real quickly, wanted to introduce myself and the project. Continental's been around for over 38 years, founded in 1979. We're a national retail, hospitality, and multifamily developer. Obviously, we're here to talk to you this evening about multifamily. We've developed over 19,000 market rate apartment homes in 18 states. We don't only develop them, but we also operate and maintain them. So we're not a merchant builder where we're coming in, building it, and flipping it. Like I said, we're all market rate, considered Class A in the market, which is the highest rating for apartment communities. This is just a quick map of the country that shows where the 19,000 plus units have been developed. The burgundy red are the 38 plus projects that we've developed and stabilized, and the blues and the greens are the 20 plus projects that are in various stages of construction and or development. Kind of zooming in on Florida, you can see we've done 14 of these Springs projects in the state of Florida. The closest ones to here are in Kissimmee, and to the south we're under construction in Port St. Lucie. You can see in the black labels, those are retail developments in Florida, and we were actually here about 10, 11 years ago and developed a Kohl's store right down the street from this site. So just a quick overview of the community. We're proposing 292 units, and it's a range of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, as Rob alluded to. And the request for the smaller units affects 24 of the 292 units. And our smallest unit is 551 square feet. And we found in our experience in Florida that that is our most well-received building, and it's because it attracts the millennial population who they don't need a lot of space. They want the smallest space at the best rate. And ironically, those units, the smaller units, get the most per square foot out of all of our units. So just to give you a range of our rents, the studios range from $1,200 starting, 3 bedrooms, up to $1,900. So these are market rate units that we screen all of our residents not only for criminal background but for financial, and are required to make 3 times as much annually as their rent. So our request complies with Port Orange's comprehensive plan goals, and the scale is consistent with neighborhood and offer unique housing type to the area. When I say unique, it's a 2-story garden style elevation with all ground level entry. So unlike some of our comparables in the market, we're not 3, 4 levels with external stairwells. When you go to your unit, everyone has a front door. Some of them go straight in at the first level, some go up some steps to a second level, but each one of them have their own ground level entry. And some of the units offer attached garages, which is unique for rental apartments. Just to get situated again, labeled as a subject site adjacent to White Palm, across the street from the pavilion. This is just a quick snapshot of the elevation. It's a hardy plank siding with some masonry around the columns. All of our balconies are screened.
All two-story?
All two-story.
No three-story like the neighbor to the north?
Correct.
Okay.
And no exposed stairwells. And this is just a shot of the clubhouse. Not only do we have a nice clubhouse, it has a pool, barbecue area, and some other amenities in the community. Will be a car care facility, so people have an area to spray down their vehicle, vacuum it out. We have 2 pet playgrounds for our residents. And this is just some photographs of those, so you can see. I don't know if you can see my mouse in here or not. There's a car care facility. It's a nice shot of some elevations. Our color scheme here is slightly different. It's a shot of our fitness center and some shots within the units. And the finishes inside, we don't skimp on the interior. Dark cabinets, wood floors, you know, comparable to the other comparables within the market. Narrowing down to the site plan, you can see the 292 units are within 12 buildings, and the site is gated and fenced with the clubhouse facing Summer Trees Road. So the clubhouse is right here where my cursor is, and this is a full turn ingress egress point. And then up here on Williamson, this is gated and fenced as well, but it will only allow for a right in, right out on the Williamson. So it gives the residents the opportunity to utilize both of these entrances coming and going from the site. Just a little background, there is an existing emergency access for White Palm that hugs this, I'll call it the northwest property line right here. If you go out there today, it's all overgrown, but when White Palm was developed, that was their emergency access. So we're maintaining that emergency access, but utilizing it for our right in, right out onto Williamson. We also have, you see right here, some detached garages. I think we only have about 41 of those, and some people use them for storage or their vehicles, but we offer that to our residents as well. This is just a picture of the black aluminum fence that will cover the entire perimeter of the site. One of the requests for the amendment we have is keep it a natural barrier that's existing today. It's thick, dense growth to a minimum of 50 feet. It goes up to 120 feet, and have this black aluminum, wrought iron-like fence and around the perimeter. We felt if we took it to the 20 feet, built a 3-foot berm and the opaque wall, it would take years to get it up to that dense natural barrier that we have today. And that's just another shot of the aluminum fence. And just as a side note, our landscaping far exceeds normal city requirements. We take great pride in how our projects look, and landscaping is one of the things we're most proud of.
So that's one less thing I have to beat you up for?
Yes.
You've been beat up already.
We know.
That concludes everything I wanted to say, and I'll make myself available for questions.
Robin, did you get a copy?
I did.
Yes.
Okay. Council, questions? Start with you, Chase.
All right. I guess a few questions from just the plans itself. Those 2 stories, that's 2 stories inside? There's not one person on top, one person down low?
It is. Some of the units are on the 2nd floor with one person below.
Okay.
So when you walk into the ground level, you could be walking up a flight of stairs to get to your unit.
And your target is the millennial population, and the young adults?
Young adults, that's why we're more heavily concentrated with the studio and the 1-bedrooms. We do have a small percentage of 3-bedrooms, and our developments typically only have between 6 and 8% school-age children, so we're not a heavy burden on the school district.
I'm not in the market, so I don't know, but I think your price points are going to be real tough to fill around here. I don't see, I was a young adult not too long ago, you know, with no kids, and I couldn't have afforded that. I'm still a young adult, but you know.
Yeah, you're with us
From my
now.
perspective, you are.
Yeah. But even now, I just, you know, we're a service-driven area around here. I don't know who's going to have that kind of income to be there. But that's, you know, you would know better than I, of course.
That's a them problem, not
Yeah.
a us problem.
Yeah. I do have several more, Mayor. How will I know you mentioned you would, you know, with the 100-foot buffer, which I'm glad to hear, how will the vegetation be impacted? What amount is going to be impacted with
It's
this?
going to be a natural buffer, as you see. It's to scale what you're looking at in the overhead right now.
To create what you're creating, what's going
So,
down?
Take a look at the pictures that are in the back of the packet.
Mhm.
Chase, you're going to see the balloon pictures. You won't see any balloons. What you're going to see is a lot of woods. That's what's there now. If you haven't looked at that area, it's a very dense area of woods. And we just didn't want to disturb it. Instead of tearing it down and planting things like some people are doing in places like on Granada Boulevard, we thought the natural landscaping might do just fine. It did, and we proved it with the pictures.
And where we're the least amount, the 50 feet, it abuts an existing stormwater basin. And so where you see the skinnier natural barrier, that's a 50-foot next to a basin. Then we get thicker along the residents that are directly adjacent to the project.
Yeah.
Back up to the aerial, you'll be able to see that.
Yeah. This is one of those, you know, lesser of two evils type of things for me. Not that this is evil, but it's one of those, nobody wants anything going in there. But the fact is, something is. You know, we had the situation a while back in front of Target. It wasn't a vote that I wanted to pass, but as opposed to what could go there, the option, you know, we'd be kicking ourselves down the road if a big box store would have gone there that wouldn't even have to come to approval. Right now, I think it's important for people to understand that this place is currently zoned, you know, for that stuff, as was mentioned before, but just want to reiterate that as well. To my knowledge, the historic plans for this area was to mirror the pavilion right in this property. And I know that the residents would not have wanted that.
No.
That's what, you know, I spoke with
That
our
would be
community.
an ugly
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. And I was out there this past weekend, talking to all the residents that I could out there, and the unanimous was, we don't want anything going in there, but we're glad if anything does, it's residential. So that is what helps me support it, is that it would keep in that continuity of what's already over there, if something has to. But there are some issues and concerns that those residents would like addressed, that I'd like addressed as well. The vast majority of them not very keen on the 5-foot iron fence between there. I'd love a conversation that you guys would have later on in the site plan. To my knowledge, tonight is just a vote for land use, though. Correct? We're not voting on the project itself. Can you speak to that, please?
Penelope Cruz, planner. So the code for this area is a little unique. When the PCA area was amended in 2012 to allow for multifamily to go in the workplace district, as part of a give and take discussion with the neighborhood, with Royal Palm at the time, the developers for White Palm actually let Royal Palm design that rear buffer. And they wanted the design of that buffer to be put into our land development code. So the requirement for the buffer in this zoning district only is in the land development code. So what they're asking to do is change it from 20 feet, a 3-foot berm and a fence, to allow them to, the language basically says, if the buffer is 50 feet or wider, they don't have to put the berm and that fence. And so what they're proposing is 50 feet at minimum, going all the way up to 120 with the aluminum fence. So they're wanting to be able to do more than what the code is currently written. But it does have to be amended in the text of the code because of the way it was added in.
Sure, yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I just wanted to express, I hope that you'll sit down with those residents over there and address those concerns with them, whether or not it happens or not, but a conversation I would hope would take place over there, and I think it will. The other one is the two entrance. You've got one in and out on Summer Trees, and we only have a right in, right out on Williamson. Is there any adjustments to that? Can you explain and speak to that? That is one of the other primary concerns of the majority of residents that I've spoken to over there.
Good question. We've had a lot of conversation both at the Planning Commission meeting and at the neighborhood meeting about that, and with staff leading up to this in the months ahead. At this point, we aren't bringing you a site plan. We're showing you something we hope is going to be our site plan, and it will include, we hope, the county issuing a use permit on Williamson, which is where the whole question of what sort of driveway is allowed. At this point, there's an existing emergency access driveway for White Palm there. We intend to improve it, and we anticipate that we're going to be limited to a right in, right out at that location. That's all we're hoping for. The other is our primary access on Summer Trees, which I think getting the turns off of Williamson is, I think, a productive thing for all of us collectively. So the folks on Summer Trees have asked about, well, how's it all going to work? Well, that happens when these guys, come forward with the actual plans for what cars are going where, and what improvements need to be made so that those cars can go in a safe manner in and out of the project. So what you're seeing here is conceptual. We're coming back with an actual plan that's engineered and ready for the test of the transportation engineers.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to ask those questions now before we came back.
We're coming back with more.
So, that's all I have on this, Mayor. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Glad I started with you. Bob?
Similar concern. My concern with the buffer is, again, that and I see the balloon test and the like, but I'd like to talk to the residents, or have the residents talk a little about what their concern is. Buffers are a key element in making the transition from one type of housing to another. And you are only 2 stories high compared to 3 stories at the next place. And the higher the building, the more the buffer. I did look at it a little, and it does appear that the wooded area is pretty dense in places. I just want to make sure that it remains dense through the building process. And 2, that there are a few areas where it's a little less dense, whether we may be able to do some additional buffering, and there's some additional plans.
Augmented somehow, sure.
Augmented. It seems to be a key concern of the people. And again, and this isn't your fault or any comment on your development, it's a comment on all our developments. We are definitely, as a council and as a city, have to take a real look at how much more traffic we're going to generate on Williamson. We're in difficult straits right now, although the traffic engineers, God bless them, tell me we're not. But the people who drive it, including me, have a strong disagreement. Hopefully, if we're able to get some additional funding, the county and the city itself, to 4-lane and put a 4-lane bridge over the interstate, Williamson will once again be a better arterial for handling traffic. Dunlawton is going to be a much more complex issue to deal with, but again, I would think that the majority of your public, residents would not head in the direction of Dunlawton. There is a back element through Willow Run that'll probably be much more efficient for them if they want to go into the other parts of Port Orange. I guess my concern is, again, and something I have to really think about, is how dense are we going to make our community? And I'm concerned about that, and traffic. And I'm concerned also about the people that live there, that we work with them to make sure that they feel, no one's ever going to feel really good about it, but at least they will be accepting. So whatever you can do to work with the surrounding community to listen to their concerns will very much influence my feelings about your project.
Can I just say, Bob, in response to part of what you were saying, that if you spent the 45 minutes or an hour to read the article in the newspaper last weekend about concurrency and impact fees and such, this project is going to be going through the concurrency review as part of the site plan. It hasn't happened yet. We've done a cursory look at the zoning aspect of it, which is a very high-level look.
Yeah.
You see the pre-post analysis is in your packet about that, which is obviously a downward, going from the million square feet of commercial down to 292. It's a decrease. But when we go through this, we're actually going to have to test those cars that are going to go from those apartments back and forth at the peak hour, what they do to the road network. That's what these guys do. They go out there and count the cars. And if improvements need to be made, we'll have to make them. That's concurrency. So that process is yet to come.
I understand.
Mayor, one follow-up question. I can come back at the end if you want.
You want to do it right now?
Yep, sure. On your, one follow-up question, sorry guys. On your plans here, I see Williamson and 2 Lane. Is there a plan, is your site planning taking into consideration the widening of Williamson later on, and how would that impact?
This was intended to be an illustrative exhibit of the site plan. Whatever was shown on Williamson that wasn't accurate as it is now, we didn't mean to reflect.
All right, I'm just thinking future.
That's a big ticket item.
That's the part by the pretty wide right now, right across from the pavilion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think it would.
There's
impact
plenty of
them
room for a
directly.
lane if the county decides to build it.
Oh yeah, we leave a lot of buffer.
Yeah, there is a 50-foot front
question.
yard set
Right.
buffer requirement as well, so the green you
see
see
it.
in the front is all natural as
Yeah.
well.
I know you guys are chomping in the bit. Scott?
Penelope, when, if you could also talk about what kind of projects could go there as it stands today and what interest has been there in the past. Is this the same property that Costco looked at one point?
I believe they were one of them. We had a concept come in from CBL, because CBL is the owner of the property, for another phase of the pavilion. It was actually going to be amending their development of regional impact, and the proposal was to build the Power Strip Center, kind of like the back strip of the pavilion, with hotels as well. So that was a very real concept that was moving forward. Like the development team said, a little over 1 million square feet of commercial is allowed right now. They'd obviously have to go through concurrency and site plan review, but that can happen right now without having to come before you.
And is this the same property also that Publix? Wasn't there some talk at some point about the current Westport Publix moving
That
when
was
they looked at this?
at one point.
Before they did their scrape and rebuild, yeah.
At one point, that was, yeah, there's been a few different things. The one that came the furthest along was from CBL. They actually had a site plan drawn for hotels and a Power Strip Center.
Okay. And just roughly, properties like Publix, Costco's, those big box stores and grocery stores and stuff like that, from a daily trip perspective, what's the difference between something like that versus a residential complex like this of this size?
A lot more, but if you want a
Rough-
specific,
roughly.
I'm going to defer that to the
It's in the-
transportation
it's in
experts.
the
Okay.
It goes from-
But it's
from
basically what was
a few
proposed
hundred
there.
to a few thousand.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
It
it's
was
almost, you know.
26 or 2,700
Yeah,
trip
it's-
difference.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
basically,
10 times.
it was basically, you know, a decrease of a little over 2,700 vehicle trips.
Okay. Thanks, Manila.
Yeah.
So a couple of comments. Chase brought up the fence. Will the fence even be visible from the west side
Very
of the
unlikely.
buffer?
You saw the balloons and a black, wrought iron
Yeah,
fence.
actually, I
It's
rode out
really,
there the
it's
other
really
day
us
and-
spending a lot more money on the fence so it looks nice for our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Rather than
So
the
the fence would be on, as illustrated, on
It's
the
gonna be
apartment
on our
side,
side.
not the.
Yeah.
Okay, so the residents wouldn't even be able to see.
I mean,
this
we're going to have a
fence.
park
It would
along the
seem
back
like-
of this site, essentially. I mean, it's
Yeah,
what comes
yeah,
out.
yeah.
In the front, for that matter, 50 feet in the front. So this is, I can't compare to all the buffers in the city, but this has got to be one of the biggest and best that I've seen in Port Orange in terms of natural vegetation being left. I mean, these guys, I mean, so to your point, Bob, about, you know, which ones do we like better? If you went to 20 feet with a berm like we did next door at White Palm, because we had to negotiate, that's what it came up with, these guys could build a lot more apartments or move the apartments back and build a lot more commercial in the front. I mean, so think about that. I mean, that's what we're bringing here is we sort of came with it done properly. So we're not really negotiating about that. It's
yeah.
a
I
good
guess
product.
my comment is relative to existing residents that live behind this proposed development. With their concern as to what the fence would look like, they probably, in all likelihood,
They're gonna
what
see
I
the
saw,
woods.
They won't see it
unless they walk through the buffer.
Their concern wasn't so much the look; it was people coming over. It was more of a protection barrier.
Okay. All right.
Actually, that fence might help with that.
Yeah, I think that style of fence
There's a
is
security
actually
aspect
does
to
help
it as
out a little
well.
bit with that. I do like that the property is being proposed to stay at a 2-story maximum without the exposed stairwells. I definitely prefer that look and design. I've seen many of those. In my conversation with residents that live out there, when it comes down to would you rather have a commercial project that could yield considerable amount of traffic that we're actually pulling into an area versus those that are going to be in and out of the area because they reside there. I think you mentioned it, Mayor, that everybody would like to see nothing happen, but we know that that's not going to happen. I mean, these properties are owned and they are going to be developed at some point, and it comes down to what's the best fit for our community. And I do think that there has been a little bit of a transition in that project area. I know that the White Palm seems, I know there was a lot of concern and what's going to happen and what's it going to be like, and I really haven't heard a whole lot of negative stuff post-development. It seems to have done well. I'm assuming they're filling the apartments over there, right? And the impacts there have been a lot less than what I think people envisioned that they might be. So those are my concerns right now. I do like the layout of the project in terms of the quality of it, and I've looked at some of the other projects that Continental has done, and I would agree that I think you guys try to keep a really high bar on the quality. So that definitely has my interest, because I know another developer may not be looking to do the same thing. So the one thing maybe I'm wrestling with right now for sure is dropping from a 600 square foot minimum to a 500. I'm just not sure what that impact would be for us in terms of the type of residents that we're trying to market and pull into our community.
Well, again, those are the highest per square
yeah,
foot
yeah,
rent.
Sure.
And there's only 24 of them.
Yeah,
so
I get it. I get it. Okay. That's all I got for right now.
Probably closer to 5.5, but even though those are single people who probably
that want to live alone, they don't need a 2-bedroom, 1,200 square foot apartment. There's just no need for it, I would guess.
I think there's some efficiencies that go along with that, with utilities and the like as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, what you got?
Rob, I think it was Bob mentioned, the residents. I believe in our conversation, you told me you had at least two or more neighborhood meetings, correct?
No, we had a neighborhood meeting that's well attended, and some of the neighbors came to the planning commission meeting. We had a lot of conversation at the meeting and afterwards, and I think we had a lot of questions resolved by most of the people we talked to. If there are folks here, I want to reserve the opportunity to answer their questions, but I don't think we have a room full like we did at the planning commission or the neighborhood meeting. But like I said, a lot of good questions from people that were thinking ahead on a lot of the things you guys have been talking about. And so that's the reason why we're here tonight without a lot of questions from you guys.
Okay, well, I'll try to keep mine brief. Let's talk about impact. Virtually 1 million square feet could go there now. That's more than 4 super Walmarts. They average about 220 some odd thousand square feet, I believe. So we're talking about huge box stores or more that could go there and generate a lot of traffic. This clearly is lesser of an impact. We're talking about roughly 2,700 less vehicle trips if it were built commercially. And then as far as the buffer goes, the residents of Royal Palm, correct, worked on the buffer and designed that 20-foot buffer with a 3-foot berm, which doesn't really hide anything, and a 5 or 6 foot fence or whatever. So you're proposing, or you're going to have a buffer that the minimum width will be 2.5 times what's required now.
Shorter
at the
buildings,
maximum,
further
it'll-
away with
Yeah,
more
it'll
buffer.
be over 5 times larger than what could happen now. So clearly that is that's the favorable lesser of the two impacts. And I think the right out on Williamson is probably smart, because if a left is allowed out of there, now you're crossing lanes. And so those are where your accidents happen, or where the tie-up happens. A lot of time it's way easier to turn right, go out that way, and pick another route than try to cross traffic and cross a lane and go left. So I think from a safety standpoint, that's probably the better way to go, is right out of there. Overall, I mean, the 2-story versus 3, what they have now, and I think there's more apartments at the White Palm project. I'm not sure. I think there's more than 292. Overall, the project is, I think, one of the better fits and that's my district out there. So I think as far as what could go there versus what you're going to do, that's probably a win for the area. Again, you can't expect that nobody would build there. The property owner has a right to sell it. Somebody has a right to buy it and develop it, within the guidelines. And if that was done now, you could have 1 million square feet. So I think I'll be quiet now, and we'll hear from the residents, and you guys can answer questions from them and go. And Don still has to go, but I appreciate the effort.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate that.
I appreciate the effort on this to make it minimize the impacts to the area.
Thanks.
Now, just briefly, I appreciate the fact that it's an amenities-driven community as well, because that in itself creates a sense of space that keeps people centralized. Good use of green space, I like that too. The walkability of that entire area, I'm glad to see the sidewalk that's going to go with that, because the walkability of that and bikeability of that entire area, we've got some missing links out there that would help with. But I think this is a step. We got to remember that this is just a step in the road, and a lot of people at this point, Bob, we've seen it in the past where they'd come for us before they'd, I know you're going to be back with the site plan approval, but they come before us without a site plan. And it's very hard for us to envision where you're going with it without that. So you've taken that next step for this one, and we know that it can change and be altered and hopefully improved upon from feedback that you've received. I am impressed with your company. I've done a little research on my own, and I've seen quality projects, and I personally, I wouldn't want to see anything less for Port Orange than what you've done elsewhere. So appreciate that. With that, why don't we thank you, gentlemen. We'll hear from the public.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, could they put up that slide of the balloon view? Do you have that?
It's in paper here, packet.
I don't
think we have it.
Penny, I was going to say.
If I can get to the agenda from here, it's in my staff report.
And we'll give you a second. Terry, I promised you'd get to go first. Come on. We'll give her a second to put that up, and then you're up. Come on, the agenda packet's only 1,107 pages long. You can't find that real quick?
And that's why we don't print it.
Because Arbor Day's coming up.
Because Arbor Day's coming up. Just a little plug for Jake there. And his electronic. Is there some, yeah.
Music. Does it have the?
I don't know.
Where
did that go?
Because it's not in Chrome. You have to open it up in Chrome for you to have the whole thing.
Well, they should have something.
Once you get in it, the first one I see is on page 976.
976?
Yep.
Yeah, 975, yep.
There's a handful of them, but the first one's there.
976 of 1107.
This was a fun agenda packet, considering it was also a tax weekend for some of us too.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you know, we don't want one of these rolling, how many city employees does it take jokes, so we're gonna blame it on the technology for running slow, right?
On this computer, and that's what you need to get the little bookmark down to get to the exact spot.
See what you started, Jack?
Can the camera zoom in on one of our computers and we can flip through the pictures? Is that possible?
No, it's still.
Oh, here we go.
This one?
Yeah, and then staff report.
So, hey, Tim, how is community development going now? There we go, all right.
So this is the actual initial graphic that shows where the balloons were placed.
Yes. And the cameras.
And then there's individual pictures where you can not see the balloons. They've stood, basically they were standing at these locations in the blue dots to try to take pictures towards where these yellow balloons were placed. I think there's only like 1 or 2 pictures where you can barely see the balloon.
And the balloons were at the height of the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Is that good? Can you see that okay?
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Like I said, there was only a few of the pictures where you could actually barely make out the balloon.
Okay. Once you,
Yeah, I think 2 of the photos at the bottom, there's a little break, and it said 2 out of the 11 or 12 photos, I think 2 said visible, and all the rest were either obstructed or mostly obstructed.
Yeah, so there's like little tiny specks. And this, and I mean, the development team can speak to this. I'm just summarizing the results, but this was also taken during, I'm going to say winter. I know we don't really have winter in Florida, but it was at the time of the year when there's the least amount of foliage on the trees. So I can barely kind of see a balloon right there.
why don't you leave that one up for a visual, and let's hear from the public.
Thank you.
Come on up, Jerry. Good.
My name is Terry Barr, and I live on Hyde Park. You know, I've listened to everything that you have said, and you've covered a lot of things that I was going to talk to you about. But the people in that community there, you know, they learned that there's going to be a drive-through or an apartment building or a convenience store is coming, and everybody becomes frantic because they don't really know what to expect or what to anticipate. And then more often than not, the plans get approved anyhow, even when people come forward. And we all have to agree that that's the truth. The development process is loaded with jargon and larded with legalese, which leaves neighborhoods feeling very bitter because a lot of people don't understand what takes place. We are a growing city, and there's going to be change, and that's a good thing. Residents need to influence the new developers early in the process, and then just maybe they can come to an agreement. More often than not, neighborhood opposition leads changes around with margins, requiring a developer to install more sidewalks or reduce the height of a planned building. Number one, the fence is not tall enough. I'm 62 years old. I can climb a 5-foot fence. So you need to have a higher fence. And I get it. You want beauty? That's fine. But the fence needs to be higher. If you're going to add to the problem, you've got to be part of the solution. And I say that not only to the developers, but to the city council. I live 3 doors in from Kohl's on Hyde Park. And if you recall, just recently, twice, I-95 was shut down going from Dunlawton to New Smyrna, from Dunlawton to LPGA. And let me tell you something. Getting out of that street was impossible. Absolutely impossible. The traffic that comes through there, because 95 doesn't just carry our neighbors. It carries travelers going from one end of the state to the other. And these people get, you know, off this freeway, and what do? They start looking for the first place that they can go. And somehow they always end up on Summertrees. Always. It took us forever to make a turn out of there during both of those fires. It's just crazy. The other thing I want to know is, who is counting these cars? Seriously, I invite you to come stay at my house. You can come stay there for a week. You can live there. I'll feed you. You need to be there all the time. And I don't know, is the chief of police here tonight or no?
He was.
He was. Okay, well, you can ask him when he comes back. On that curve on Summertrees, there is always a police car or 2 shooting radar. Now, they wouldn't be doing that just to be doing it if they didn't know that when these cars turn off of Dunlawton onto Summertrees, it's like their foot's to the floor, and they go as fast as they can up to Williamson, and then get out there and make that left-hand turn.
That's another issue. I need to get to some other people. Thank you, Terry.
Okay, I'm just letting you know it is not a very good idea.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who else would like to speak? Come on up. Jerry has found his voice.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I appreciate the chance to talk. My name is Jerry Harris. I live back in Coquina Cove, 5403 Cordgrass Bend Lane. And the traffic is horrendous. And they're burning everything that they've demolished along Tomoka Farms Road and Town West Boulevard. So you can't really sit outside at times. So it's a fire threat, but I guess the easiest thing to do is burn everything. As far as, I know something's going to go there. It's going to be developed for something, but it's just too much growth, too fast. We need to get ready for it. Infrastructure, police, everything. Where they're building or clearing the land on Tomoka Farms Road, Corsey Field, all kinds of houses, Sanctuary, all kinds of houses. And it is difficult getting in and out of that neighborhood. I mean, I've learned more ways around Port Orange because I'm trying to find alternate routes. I will do anything. I'll travel an extra 20 minutes just to avoid Dunlawton. And I fear for safety on a lot of this. And it does affect the quality of life. I'm not saying no, never develop it. That's foolish. I know it's going to be. But we got so much right now being developed. Let's get ready for more development. Let's take care of what we got going on. That's all I'm asking. Is to can we just slow it up a little bit and get our traffic thing worked out? So, or make it better. Because you got a lot of people moving in here. And this is a nice area. People want to live around here. I wanted to live around here. I still do.
People from the north keep coming down here, Jerry.
Yeah, well, hello. But no, seriously, that's all I can say is, can we just slow it down some? Slow it down. Put a little more thought into this. And let's concentrate on what we have and get that up to snuff and then progress along. That's all I'm asking. A little patience, because it takes a lot of patience to get around Port Orange. I mean, sometimes I dread going to the store, and ride a bicycle. No, Not the way I see people drive around there. No way. So that's all I'm asking. A little patience, slow it up, because there's a lot going on. There's so much going on. I can't believe what they've cleared and how much building is going to happen. And I know it's going to happen. But can we slow the pace of it? That's
Appreciate you, Jerry.
okay. I
Thanks.
appreciate you hearing me. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Jerry.
Who else? Come on, Jack.
My name is Jack McVeigh. I live at 5431 Cana Court in the Villages of Royal Palm. About 7 or 8 years ago, Mr. Mayor, you attended a meeting at the Royal Palm Clubhouse, attended by 300-400 people, and we were there to seek information about White Palms. There was concessions that was made. The developer made concessions, the county council made concessions. We got the streetlight at Town West installed and activated in 8 months. I was labeled as the voice of reason for the people who spoke at Royal Palm, and I was asked to participate in follow-up meetings at City Hall. My wife will debate that label of voice of reason, but tonight I would like to again be the voice of reason. Everyone who has spoken, Mr. Ford, you are very eloquent. It can be developed into commercial entities. It could be a Costco. It could be another super Walmart. There could be much more traffic. This is the best development for that property. I attended a meeting that Cobb Cole had over in the pavilions, and they gave an informal presentation. There was no mention about a retail aspect of this development. This morning's paper says there's going to be 2 buildings for an automotive style retail establishment and a restaurant. As a resident of Royal Palm and representing my community, I think this picture that Penny brought up is our retention pond. I have a couple of requests of the board and the developer. Number one, this woman who spoke is absolutely right. A 5-foot fence does nothing. The issues that we have had as residents of Royal Palm is some of their residents coming onto our community with their dogs and letting them do their business. A 6-foot fence would be much better, and we request that. Also, because the retention pond that was built for Royal Palm, there's not a lot of vegetation around it. We would ask that the developer add additional mature vegetation, not starter, but mature, to block the view of it. A 2-story building is much more acceptable than a 3-story. But I would ask this board tonight to not allow retail on that parcel. And the reason why is because retail generates 50% more traffic than residential. You have a massive project across the street that CBL owns that has room for additional development. If they want to put retail, put it over on the pavilion side. Okay. The other thing that I would ask...
How much more time you need, Jack?
Just a couple of minutes.
What do you think, council? Because I got other people to listen to.
I'll make it quick.
Are we good with letting them to continue?
As long as it's quick.
The
Okay.
White Palms took over the maintenance of the county right-of-way. The swale that holds water in front of their property, they maintain it. If this property moves forward, I ask that the city require and request that the developer maintain that. Right now, I fight with the county maintenance crew at least 4 times a year to get them to come out and mow that. We would appreciate if they would take over that maintenance as the developer.
Okay.
And I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Who else?
Two over here.
Come on, Robert.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. My only comment has to do with balancing jobs with residents. And I think that's part of our problem out there, and why Dunlawton's such a mess, is because we got all the people living out there, but all the jobs on this side. And I was hoping that there would be more businesses along Williamson so that we could create jobs, and by having people in the vicinity of their job, that decreases traffic. It doesn't increase traffic. And the commercial aspect, the traffic is throughout the day. It's not just at commute times. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Heather Mullins, 1931 Yellowfin. Just to kind of piggyback off Robert there, where can I find this traffic study?
When the site plan comes forward, which is not what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
We're just doing the zoning tonight.
Okay, cool.
When the site plan comes forward, we'll post it, and we'll have that in association with it.
Okay, cool, because I've heard a lot of talk, and like Robert said, as a resident on that side, I'm concerned with, not throughout the day, I don't care if you come and buy all the groceries and all of your friends come and you come in busloads at 11 o'clock. I'm more concerned at 7 a.m. and around 5 p.m. I want to see the traffic study reflect that, not how many cars come and go throughout the day. That doesn't matter to me. That doesn't matter at 7 a.m. when Williamson is backed up and you can't even get to, and I haven't even got to Dunlawton yet.
At the peak.
So can we have that talked to, and can we have that addressed in that traffic report?
Yep.
And I also like the other comment, if you're going to be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution. So where's the proposal for the increased funding for maybe a traffic study like the Target Center did? I'd like to hear some of that. Thank you.
Okay. Mark?
Good afternoon, Mark Dickinson, Herbert Street. Let's see if I can pull up the map real quick. Wasn't ready for this, but my time's already started. Yeah, that makes sense. That's not I'll get a load in there for you guys. Thanks for listening. I want to just bring some attention to this intersection. I think I'm at the right spot. Yes, this is one of the weirdest intersections I've ever seen in pretty much all of Volusia County here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a yield sign where the mouse is kind of hovering right here. That's way back here, and then I almost get ran over right here. But what's going to happen in the future? I believe Taylor and Dunlawton is supposed to be widened out towards 415. Was that something that I've heard or talked about?
It's on the county master plan.
Okay, yeah, good, because if not, it's going to need to be, that intersection is just such a gauntlet right there, and if you add the traffic in there for, no matter what, if it's retail or if it's going to be residential, you're definitely going to see a lot of people come from Daytona or Orlando coming from work, I-4, I-95 down here, and then trying to merge over to Summers Trees. And if my guesstimates are right, I imagine everybody's gonna come off the interstate and try to head down to Summer Trees and over. It's a path of least resistance of a traffic light turning onto Williamson, and then either making a U-turn or turning left into it. So one of the problems that I have here is that this section, no matter what you do, needs to be fixed, and probably needs to be fixed now, sooner than later. And one of the problems that I heard recently is that on something else I brought attention to is that, well, DOT approved it. That's the way it stands, but unfortunately, speaking about the sidewalk that I'm referring to, this road, I think, is county, and unfortunately, I just don't want to, I hope we don't have to hear that as, well, this is county road, but we drive here as citizens in this roadway, and you're here representing us to represent and go to the county to see if you can put some pressure on them to fix this. Well, one of the things that I say there's, with this development, when it comes in, you're going to have how many ever spaces are on the site plan. You have to expect that many cars, 100% of those, because that's what you design it for. But if nothing else, if it goes forward with residential or retail, this little section right here, with that increased flow of traffic, needs to be addressed now versus after the fact, I think, as well. So but that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Who else? Come on.
forgot my distance glasses, so these are prescription. My name is Linda DeMatti. I live in Port Orange. I'm concerned, you're making a choice between commercial or residential. I would like residential. I think that would be better. However, I haven't heard much. The previous people have spoken about the roads. I live down the street on Williamson. I think before we put anything there, that has to be addressed. It's one way for most of Williamson, for each direction. If a commercial vehicle is on that road, you could pray before you get to where you're going. And because the speed limit is 50, these commercial trucks do 30 with these big tractor trailers. And so maybe we need we definitely need to widen Williamson, and maybe we need another entranceway onto 95 between 4 and and the Port Orange, because whoever designed getting on and off where you get on 95 by the bridge, it's too small. If you live in the area, you know what lane to go in before you even get there. But if you're a visitor, oh my God, it's confusing. It's so confusing. And I'd like to see how many accidents are there. But before we even consider putting residential there, I didn't hear anybody ask, well, how many are you going to put of 3 bedrooms? And how many 2 bedrooms? And they did mention, which I believe is about 10% for the studio apartments. I would like to see the board be a little bit more creative with that area. We want to bring in millennials, but we need to offer them jobs. We need to, and then when they start, we want them to stay. And when they start to grow, well, go into a 2-bedroom apartment or a nice, reasonable house. And so I would like to see that. I'm concerned because I'm next down the street between Willow Run and Williamson. And that's another street that is not ready for this traffic. And like most of them say, and I do the same, I do whatever I can to avoid Dunlawton. Especially, like the young lady said, between the hours of school and people coming home from work in the morning and afternoon. These roads can't hold it. It's ridiculous. So they want to put in almost 300 units. Well, that's at least the minimum of 3,000 cars, and then some. Our roads can't hold it. So before again, I like residential, but I think we need to lower the number. And what they mentioned in the prices of these units are a little bit on the high side to attract. And if I'm not sure how this works because I'm new to the area.
You're over 3 minutes, Linda. You wrapping up?
Yes, I'm wrapping it up. Well, this may be a nice company, but can we put it out to bid for the owner to bring in alternative? And that's what I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Did I get everybody in the room? Looks like I got everybody. Back to us. Hot standby. Hot standby is right there.
Got answers.
Okay. Back to council. Chase, comments, closing statements, or questions?
Nope. No closing comments.
Bob?
Yeah, clearly, the public, the roads are all sending the same message. We really need to start thinking about how we're going to constrain future development. Until we reach that point where we do have infrastructure that can handle it. I hear you very clearly. And the question is, how do we do that? And that's going to be a real dilemma, because realize the council back in 2005 designated the land uses we're trying to deal with now. And once a property is defined and someone's bought it, understanding that they can do certain things with it. Council is constrained legally as to what it can do. So we're in an interesting legal position in terms of constraining growth. That doesn't mean we can't, but it means we have to be very cautious to try how we achieve that type of thing.
With the word quality in mind. Chase, I'll come back to you. Scott?
Yeah, just a couple of comments, and I'm sure Rob's going to touch on some of these questions that were raised by residents if he'll do that as well. But in terms of the project itself, this is not a government project. This is a private project. So I think it needs to be understood that government's reach into telling them how to design and build their apartments is really limited. This is up to them. This is all their risk. It's their dollars. If they build an apartment complex that people aren't going to rent, that's their problem. That's on them. That's not ours. However, I will say, having been born and raised in this area, that Port Orange has always been looked upon more of a residential community, a bedroom community, if you will. Yeah, over the last couple of decades, we've seen more retail stores and stores of convenience and things like that that have come to the community. But, you know, residentially, I don't know of a project ever in our city that hasn't done well and filled the units. Homes sell, apartments rent. So that's, but again, that's their business to set their rates and figure out what the market is. And they don't venture into these projects without doing that kind of homework and setting that. In terms of traffic, I think everybody on this council is in agreement with all the concerns. We wrestle and deal with those all the time. Mark Dickinson brought up very, very valid points. You know, you look at the roadways of concerns here, these are not municipal streets. And certainly I know I have, and many of us voice our concerns to our county and state officials. But Mark, I would tell you that I think the residents have got to do that too. They got to help us, you know, so it's great for you to come up here, man. But I encourage you to go stand at the county chambers as well and talk about that county roadway, those future plans, because you very, very valid points. And you speak very well of that, and I know you do your homework on that, but that's kind of what we need too. We need to have that help of our residents, and I know our residents will help us to address some of those concerns. The fence height thing, you know, I think the developer has heard the concerns. I'm still, I guess with my background, I know fences are limited, whether you've been 10 feet tall or 5 feet tall. And in these other communities, you can walk around the fence to walk into the communities. You know, Windsor Hill is not a gated community. I know Royal Palm has, well, at least they have a security building. I don't think it's staffed still, but you know, they've got the great, huge viburnums that run around the. Man, I love that. That is awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. I know it's a fortune for you guys to maintain because it's gotten so tall, but that's a great example of a beautiful buffer. And I would encourage the developer to go and look at that. Because that was a really relatively inexpensive investment that over the years has grown to produce a really nice aesthetic buffer that I think serves a lot of positive things. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I would encourage the developer to go to look at that. I know you talked about your landscaping selections and things like that, but the viburnums that you will see around the perimeter of Royal Palm have done extremely well, so there's no reason to think that type of stuff won't do very well for you. And in some places, those things have got to be 12, 15 feet tall, which is far going to surpass a 5-foot fence, and nobody's climbing over those viburnums. So anyway, those comments there, and then Rob, if you would, when the mayor gives you that green light, if you would just touch on some of the residents' concerns as well.
Drew?
Isn't their fence that they're constructing more to keep people from coming onto their property than to keep, because if you want to get it, you just walk out the gate and you walk around. So, and really 5 foot, 6 foot, if somebody wants to get over it, they're going to get over it one way or another. You know, if somebody wants to do something bad or nefarious, they're going to find a way to do it. You know, so as far as a fence, I mean, a 5-foot fence it's basically, it's not on the border of the property, it's close up to their building. So you got a 100-foot buffer, you got a 50-foot buffer, a wooded area, then you're still going to have some space, and then you're going to see the fence that's bordering their apartment buildings. It's not going to be on the property line, it's going to be closer to their buildings than on the property line. So I don't know what a taller fence would accomplish. A 6-foot fence, you could build
Maybe
a
against
10-foot
the
wall
buffer.
and people find a way around it or whatever. So the landscape buffer and the increased, density, and I went out there, and many of those areas you can hardly see anything through there. There are well-developed trees, there are young trees, and there's a pretty good mixture of everything. So I look forward to hearing your response to some of the concerns and seeing what they can do.
And let's keep in mind too, a lot of these things we're talking about are not things we're going to approve or request
Yeah.
tonight. These are things that we're giving you feedback to put the best site plan you can together when you bring it back to us, and then we can beat you up over it again. So,
One quick thing, Dad.
go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor. Just because I wanted to mention this too for those that are watching at home as well as here tonight, but just for a reference point of, I was curious, 1 million square feet of commercial. The Kohl's that is there currently nearby is only about 85,000 square feet, and the Publix is right at 50,000 square feet. So you're talking considerable size commercial development that could potentially be used on that. And I got to be honest with you, I haven't had any residents, I'm sure there's a couple out there who have said, no, I'd rather have a big commercial project versus, a residential with much less impact. So just for size reference.
The pavilion is 550,000 square feet.
I know it's
It's a 500,000 square feet, so really
It's a
you
lot.
could almost fit 2 pavilions on that property if you
Well,
desire.
depends on your level of creativity. Rob, come up. I do want to bring up one point.
Mayor.
I'll come back to you as soon as I'm done. The buffering that Jack, when he was up here, mentioned, the swale maintenance, I would like, and will probably require it of you, so you probably ought to take a look at what it's going to take to include swale maintenance on Williamson, because what Royal Palm does with that swale, it's beautiful. And it contrasts and really puts everybody else in the area to shame. So
That's within the county right away.
Yeah.
We'll be talking to them.
Okay, very good. Chase, something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did want to respond to, was it Kathy with the cool glasses? Yes. Linda. Hey, Linda, excuse me. You mentioned about the Rose and the Williamson, and none of that was discussed tonight. I wanted to say it wasn't discussed because we discuss that quite often. That is certainly on our our agenda, and we're pushing for that widening of Williamson, extension of Madeline with a 95 exit ramp off there. Those are things that we're working heavily on trying to get. So it wasn't discussed tonight for lack of not thinking of it. Just we continue to punch on that.
But this gentleman here had mentioned that they would look into participating.
You got,
have-
Chase, you engaged her. I got to have you on the record since you engaged her, Chase. You got to come up if you want to say it on the microphone. I'm sorry, Linda.
This gentleman here mentioned that he would address it, but not right away. And as far as participating into the widening of Williamson, that you would take some responsibility.
Not yet.
If I heard him correctly.
The only way for us to do this is to have dialogue, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm
Because I
going
don't
to
know
let
what
you
she's asking of
respond.
me.
I'm sorry, I'm going to let you respond to us. But after this item, we're taking our 8:30 break, so I'll let you guys talk.
Okay, and so this will go up, but Williamson will still be one lane each way, and that's not fair to all of us that live in this community.
Linda, do me a favor, just speak your full name into the microphone since you came up.
Linda DiMattia.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Sounds like I'm going to turn into a pumpkin in about less than 3 minutes. So I'm just going to say a couple things because I think a lot of the comments have already been addressed by you guys. A lot of the comments are going to come through the site plan approval process and be addressed. But a couple of the bigger ones I want to point at. Jack, you and I were involved in the Royal Palm and White Palm conversation over a long period of time. I'm not sure exactly what you were talking about when you said, where are you, Jack?
Right here.
when you said that I was representing something different at the neighborhood meeting with the plans that you see tonight.
Rob, you got to talk to me, but you can
But
mention Jack's thing.
just so Jack knows, nobody was doing any kind of bait and switch. Those were the plans. There's actually, as you saw, 2 out parcels on the Williamson still that are shown on the plan. They're still there. I think what happened, and I may be putting words in his mouth, but I think you read the newspaper article today, which actually was about 2 cases tonight. One hasn't been up yet, that had commercial component, and it looked like it was all one project. I think it's 2 projects that were shown in one article that looked like we were doing something that we weren't. Restaurants, automotive, or something. That's not us. So just want to clear that up, just for the sake of being honest with what we did at the meeting. The traffic comments, I want to say just a couple things about. And Tyler, you were asking questions about peak hour versus all throughout the day. Those are good questions. Those are relevant questions to their expertise. If you look at page 3 of your agenda item, staff report, as well as page 2 of the traffic analysis, they did in fact do a worst case scenario for the existing condition, which is allowed, and then what we were asking for. So the pre-post is what they look at. It's theoretical. It's not out counting cars. It's looking at what the worst case scenario could be with the commercial that's allowed now versus what we're proposing with the apartments in the out parcel. So at the end of the day, it's a dramatic reduction in peak hour trips, not overall trips, but peak hour. And the reason is because of the magnitude of the commercial that's allowed now. That's the reason. And to be honest with you, it's theoretical. Could they squeeze it all in there? Who knows? Would that commercial user really come at that size? Who knows? But that is what we're tasked with doing in a theoretical pre-post analysis of a zoning case. So that's what we did. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that we did that, what we were supposed to do. But more importantly, when we come through the site plan process, that's when concurrency gets you. I wanted to tell you guys about one story that's very recent, that's very similar to this situation. This morning at County Council, Volusia County Council, and last week at Daytona Beach City Commission, I had a project very similar to this. Very similar size, garden-style apartments, same sort of setup in terms of the garages. Some of them had their own garages on Williamson. I think it's $560-something thousand worth of prop share going into the widening of Williamson right down the street. That was what came out of the site plan review process, not the zoning process, but the site plan review process for an apartment complex I just got approved at the County Council this morning. And there was a lot of improvements along Williamson that were adjacent to the project, turn lanes and such, that had to be improved so that the project would work. We aren't there yet on this project.
Right.
We are not presenting a site plan to you. We're not testing traffic concurrency, but we're going to be. Your code says we have to, and we will be. So just giving you an example of one that happened today, one that was finally approved today, that is going to be requiring improvements on Williamson Boulevard. To that tune I just told you. Got a commercial project right next door to it, putting in almost $2 million to widen Williamson right down the street as well. So these things are happening. Concurrency is real. It's something that the developers are really making contributions, and I'm giving you 2 real ones right there.
Mm-hmm. And I think I mentioned it earlier that one of the difficulties we've had in the past with zoning requests, and we've been asked to do this without any kind of a concept. Even though we're not approving that concept tonight, we've got an idea of the vision for the property with the zoning request, and that really is what we're ruling on tonight, is the zoning request. And keep in mind that the site plan will come back, and if you think you got beat up tonight, the devil is really in the details.
I got my bodyguards with me.
All right. Any other comments before I call the vote, Council?
I just agree with you on the having a site plan, an idea while making these decisions was very, very helpful tonight.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. The average rent is pretty important to understand, because we've had another apartment complex, not in that area, but nearby, that has turned into an absolute disaster for the neighbors. Mm-hmm. And your council is watching that very carefully to make sure that the residents that do come into these apartment complexes are of the quality that will complement your neighborhood rather than threaten it. So.
One of the questions.
Anything else? Robin, call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phillips.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. At this point, we're going to take our 8:30 break. It will be 15 minutes in length, so we will reconvene at 8:54. We are in recess. Brings us to item 18, first reading of ordinance number 2018-6. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Land Development Code, amending Chapter 17, Section 1 to codify the city's policy for interim agricultural uses on properties rezoned to a non-agricultural zoning district for future development, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Motion approved. Ordinance 2018-6.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. It's Community Development Night.
Penelope Cruz, planner. So basically what you just read in, it's been the city's longstanding policy to allow existing agriculture uses to continue when properties are rezoned to a non-agriculture zoning until they're ready to come in, submit their site plan or subdivision, and those plans are approved. Once those plans are approved, those uses then cease. So this amendment is just to codify that historical policy and just make it a little bit more transparent. A lot of cities in Volusia County have been tackling this. They've actually contacted us because we already have this exact language in our code right now. In the planned commission, the PCA zoning district, the district we were just talking about, this exact language is already in there. This is just to clarify that that same policy has been the case throughout the city and just make that more transparent.
Okay. Questions, council? I want to start with this side. Drew?
Really, it's more of a cleanup, if you will, codifying what we got. So, yeah, I mean, might as well, you know, set it in, put it to writing and set it in stone, if you will. So,
Scott?
I don't have anything for it.
Bob?
Yeah, I have problems with this. I've had a problem for a long time. When I ride along in Port Orange and I see a piece of property worth a huge amount of money sitting there waiting for development. In fact, development's already planned, and there's one cow on it, and they pay hardly any taxes. The whole thing of agricultural exemptions makes sense if it's for real agriculture, but as a way to shield properties from paying their full taxes, you know. And by the way, I'm not blaming these property owners. They're taking what they can, but I'm telling everyone in the audience that if we don't get control over these type of exemptions and these ways of cutting taxes, we are in for real trouble, because increasingly many other types of exemptions have been passed. Probably only about 60 to 70% of properties now are paying taxes in the city. A lot of properties for a whole series of other exemptions aren't paying their taxes. And in this case, what we're codifying is that a property can be rezoned to a higher and better use and yet pay taxes only on the lowest possible level, which is agricultural. And I have problems with that, because that type of thing is what's causing tremendous problems and shifting the burden of property taxes to an increasingly smaller group of people. And by the way, it's not just residents that are suffering residential, but the group that's probably getting hit the hardest is our business community, our existing businesses, because as we narrow and exempt properties, or those properties underpay their taxes, someone has to make up the difference. So I'm very ill at ease at this. I'm very ill at ease with the whole agricultural exemptions. If it's a real farm, I have no problem with it. But if it's a farm developed just to lower taxes, then I have a problem.
We're gonna, this is a good one for us, but Chase gets a turn first.
Good.
I agree with you to a point, and the point being that there are some ag properties in the cities that are ag properties in the city because they can be, and that's the way they want to continue to go. There are, the flip side of that is, if you have ag properties that are zoned ag properties right now, but you don't apply different zoning, it's very hard to market and plan for those properties if you don't know you're going to get that zoning. If I go buy a property in hopes of getting a zoning change and I fail to get that zoning change later, then I'm not going to be able to sell that property, and it's not going to be marketed, and then you could end up with even more agriculture zones in the city with development all around it. So I think that I think it has to be a guarded situation myself, and that if you have a future land use that's allowed by zoning, but you're currently in an ag status, we have to have some standards in place to make sure you're actually using it for agriculture. Otherwise, you should lose that tax benefit. I don't know, that's just my take. Council?
And again, I understand why people want to do this. The problem I have, it's perpetuating another exemption that's widely used, and if a property gets a higher level of zoning, it means that property is worth a lot more now. But it's still going to be paying minimal taxes at best. And I
think the planner was saying once it's redeveloped, they can only use that zoning till it's redeveloped, which it changes that. Like Don said, if you can't market it and sell it, it's going to be ag forever. If you get it rezoned and reclassified, the agricultural exemption will end upon redevelopment, correct?
Oh.
You stop using it for agriculture, you lose the exemption.
There you go.
But what I'm saying is you can hold it out there for 4 or 5 years while you look for the highest price from some developer, and then the citizens, or the taxpayers of Volusia County, the taxpayers of Port Orange, have to pay more to cover that property.
Well, if it's been used for agriculture in perpetuity, up until this point, then they're not paying for anything that they're not already doing.
I'm not Cinderella. I go out there and I look at these properties. They have 2 cows. There must be a rental cow business where you buy a little piece, you get 20 or 30 acres, you want to build a subdivision, or you want to build in the future a commercial enterprise, rent a cow, and it cuts your taxes by about 99%.
But you're not cutting the taxes. You're maintaining the taxes at a level that they're already at. You're not increasing it just simply because you rezoned it for something that you might not do for another 10 years. You're not cutting the taxes at all. You're paying exactly what you've been using it for over infinitum. But the thing of it is that if we do this, my fear is that we could actually perpetuate the problem instead of because that potential is there also.
Right now, after the last discussion we had, I wouldn't mind if some properties would stay a little agriculture for a period of time until we get our roads built to handle what we got.
Thus the ag exemption.
So anyway,
I think I agree with that. That helps make my argument.
No, but the minute they've now rezoned it for a commercial or a residential use, at that point the assessor should come in and evaluate the property on its new use. That's all.
My thing is if you've been using it for ag and you rezone it, and you tax it that way, you are going to accelerate the growth of that property. If you want to plan a city, you want to plan your expansion, you've got to look 10, 20, 30 years out into the future and put those possibilities in place with the zoning and let it build accordingly. But if you start taxing the heck out of these people for something that they don't intend to do 5, 10, 20 years from now.
So tax the heck out of all the residents. Because they got to make up the differences.
No, they don't. There's no difference to make up because you're not putting anything in place. You're not lowering anybody's taxes. You're keeping them exactly where they are. I told you we were going to have fun with this.
Yeah, but I disagree. I think putting 3 or 4 cows on a piece of property and calling it a ranch is, and I think everyone in the state of Florida knows that the
There are
The
some properties like that. I
agricultural
will agree with you.
exemption is an ongoing joke, and I just don't want us to get part of the same
7.74 acres in
joke.
Jackson.
That's all.
If you were taking a piece of property and rezoning it and then bringing in cows, I'd wholeheartedly agree with you. If you've been
Well, that's
grazing the cows there for the last 20 years and you intend to the next 5, 10, 15 until you develop it,
Oh, no. People are bringing in the cows and doing it agricultural, you know, after having paid other taxes on it. I mean, it goes both ways.
Sure it does.
So,
I gotta get out and ride around a little bit. Where are all these properties with cows in Port Orange? You got a bunch of cows in the River District, Bob?
They're not in the River District. We pay our full taxes unhappily.
Any other
I
council?
had no idea we had so many cows in Port Orange.
Anybody else like to speak to this?
Good evening. My name is Dwight Durant. I'm with Zev Cohen and Associates, but I'm really here kind of from a standpoint of Team Volusia. I'm chairman of Team Volusia. This, you know, I hear you, Bob, and I agree with you. I think you know a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two to steal the commercial, and that kind of ticks me off too when that's not being done. But I think what's going on here and what I'm trying to advocate throughout the county, and you guys are going to get a workshop on it. You've asked for that, and that's coming up through Team Volusia. Is that there's a difference between agricultural exemption and agricultural classification. And I think what's being asked for here is that you've got true bona fide agricultural uses that used to not be in town, but they are in town now because town has grown out. And you look at everything to the west of the interstate, those are bona fide uses. And so the reluctance is for the property owner not to do anything with the property because the fear of failing or getting it and then not being able to sell it. So they're not asking for any change in that. They're just asking to be able to hold that until the actual use is put. And that's when the tax, or that's when the tax of the infrastructure occurs, when the development occurs, and that's when they should be paying the taxes. So don't want to beat a dead horse. I was here last month to say the same thing. I just want to make sure that there's an extent. The agricultural exemption is not granted here. It's not a zoning. That's an exemption from the tax side. And you got to meet a whole bunch of rules, and I don't think that's what's on the table. Although I agree with you in that regard. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Dwight.
Thanks, Dwight.
Anybody else like to speak to this? Back to us. Drew? Scott?
Good.
Chase? You get your final word.
No, I made my point, that's all.
Eloquently, as usual. Call the roll.
Councilman Ford?
No.
Councilman Tremont?
Yes.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 4-1. That was fun, Bob.
Yep. We can't have all 5 votes.
Yeah. Which brings us to item 19, first reading of ordinance number 2018-7. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, approving the First Amendment to the restated First Amendment to the Master Development Agreement, Nova Depot Planned Commercial Development and Conceptual Development Plan, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance 2018-7.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Jim Bourbon, Community Development. The proposed MDA is to essentially allow for the subdivision of an existing commercial lot into 2 lots. Currently, this site is being developed with Family Dollar. The MDA is proposing to allow for the second lot to be created, which will be located, it's called Proposed Lot Phase 2A. As part of the Master Development Agreement, the applicant has requested that the lot width or the lot area for 2A be established at 30,000 square feet. This is comparable to the other cities' conventional zoning districts in terms of lot area, which were attached to the staff report. I believe the community commercial is around 30,000 and the highway commercial is around 25,000. So it's in line with the existing lot areas for commercial development here in Port Orange. If approved, the subdivision and eventual site plan for that lot would be required to comply with all city requirements in terms of parking, stormwater, landscaping as it moves through the system in terms of submitting applications. Staff is recommending approval of the MDA amendment, and the applicant is also here to further discuss their request.
Okay. You want to hear from the applicant?
Sure.
Yeah, let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening. For the record, Michael Woods, law firm Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard in DeLand. We're in our new office now and happy to be there. Tim's statement is pretty straightforward. In fact, we probably spent more time trying to hone the name of the amendment to make it as lengthy as possible rather than what the application is there for. You have a PD that is in place now that is in process of being built out. And we've got the ability here with all the infrastructure currently in place. We provide for all the buffering and setbacks required under the original PD that are already in place as well, and have the ability to put in a fourth additional lot. We've gone through a lot of work with the staff just to make sure that everything is ironed out and straightforward, and that there's no elements that have been overlooked. But this is kind of the elephant gun to shoot the mosquito, because the only real amendment is the square footage of the new lot being dropped down to 30,000 square feet. And you do have a provision in the PD that had it as a 3-lot PD. This becomes a 4-lot. But happy to answer any questions you may have. You've got all the cross-access provisions for it within this project to connect up to Sam's, and it has the one shared access point onto Nova.
Questions? Start with you, Drew.
I get it, they're trying to squeeze one more commercial unit in there. Square footage really isn't changing, it's just adding.
Correct. And
the area of the square footage, I get it.
Yeah. And when the PCD was originally passed, I don't know that's actually in the staff report, but the underlying land use entitlements, this is, even with this additional, we are substantially below what would otherwise be allowed. So,
Chase?
I'm good.
Scott?
No, I'm good.
Bob?
I'm good.
I'm not. Now, is that smaller than the Waffle House lot?
It's actually, the lot itself, I believe, is smaller than the Waffle House lot, but I don't think that the building itself will be. Let me pull that up for you real quick.
Waffle House is like 2,000 square feet.
The Waffle House does generate a little traffic. Now, I don't think it generates new traffic because
there's only like 5 cars there.
Right. Yeah. I need to go through the same analysis at site plan.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone from the public like to speak to this? There being none, final comments, council? Call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Which brings us to resolution number 18-8, item 20 on the agenda, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, accepting proposed amendments to the City of Port Orange comp plan and authorizing submittal to the state land planning and other agencies and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve resolution number 18-8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Community Development Night continues.
Tim Berman, Community Development. Subject property is located on the southeast corner of Willow Run Boulevard and South Williamson Boulevard. As indicated, basically, this is a future land use amendment. There are currently 3 future land use designations on the property as it stands right now. High density residential, medium density residential, and suburban residential. The request is to change from the 3 residential densities, future land use, to the mixed use center land use category. Also, as part of the future land use amendment, there would be a policy added to the comp plan which would restrict the intensity and density on the project. As indicated in the staff reports, 276 units and 250,000 square feet of non-commercial uses would be limited. Again, these are basically just kind of parameters and frameworks that are set in there. We don't anticipate, once you put roads, stormwater, those intensities being developed. But basically, it's mainly due to the flexibility nature of that mixed-use center. We had to put those parameters in there. The proposed future land use is a city effort that's basically we're looking at doing in terms of shifting commercial uses, high-intensity uses from intersections where there's a lot of traffic, such as the Taylor-Dunlon or Taylor-Williamson area, trying to shift that commercial area to other portions of the city then. As indicated in the item before this one with the multifamily development, that's replacing about 1 million square feet of commercial with a apartment complex. One of the policies that's in the comp plan is to not reduce or not eliminate any non-commercial uses. So with changing that to multifamily, the city looked at basically ways to try to incorporate maintaining at least some of that commercial or non-commercial uses that would have been lost. So we looked at was this project up in this area here on Willow Run and South Williamson Boulevard as an area to transfer some of that non-commercial that would be lost and put at this intersection, mainly because you got the intersection of an arterial and a collector road, and also, as indicated in our comp plan, it anticipates the eventual connection of Yorktown Boulevard through there. So there are multiple access points, collector roads that feed into this property. One of the reasons it was selected. Also, too, when looking at basically terms of commercial uses, everyone kind of goes to that point at the intersection of Dunlawton, Taylor, Williamson. Idea is to move some commercial further up, so trips are not having to occur into that intersection. Individuals from these neighborhoods around there, Willow Run, Hidden Lakes Drive, Town Park Boulevard, everyone there, instead of having to travel down to Dunlawton to get certain services, offices, work, they'd be able to utilize this, basically preventing the trips from having to go further down into our more congested roadways. Also, as mentioned, basically there's a comp plan policy, so trying to maintain that. And when comparing the overall PM peak trips and general trips generated, when you take the two uses as they currently stand, and then the proposed future land use on this property and also the apartment complex there, it does result in a significant trip generation loss on that segment of Williamson Boulevard then. So both of these projects hand in hand still are reducing what could theoretically be generated on Williamson if moved forward. The comp plan amendment identifies, or the comprehensive plan identifies this area, this intersection, as a commercial node intended to serve the residential in that area. Like I mentioned, those subdivisions.
I'm sorry, Tim. I'll pause my question. I want to make sure I hear you correctly. With this rezoning right here at this point into commercial, you're saying the trip count would reduce?
No, I was saying basically that if you take basically both projects, the commercial project that's basically the apartment complex that went from 1 million square feet to about 300 apartments, and then this project where we are increasing the commercial on it by only 2,500 square feet. If you basically take those two projects, the trip generation between the two projects is ultimately results in a decrease as it currently stands today. Because mainly you're essentially, between the two projects, you're going from 1 million square feet of commercial to 250,000 square feet of commercial. So there's that reduction in commercial. And also we are reducing the amount of residential units that could be on that property too. I think currently it stands about 325 and it'll be reduced to 276. So kind of, looking at both projects together then is resulting in that decrease in number of trips then. And like I said, basically we're moving the commercial at that intersection, and we're repositioning at another intersection to try to maintain some of our commercial land use within the cities in terms of purpose, the comp plan indicates then. As stated, this intersection is identified on the comp plan as a commercial node in turn intended to serve those residential areas in there. Also too, as you can see, we've got radon nearby, eventual Thompson Pump going in there, and toward the west then we also have that land, future land use and zoning in place for more commercial, office, industrial type uses. So this also can serve as a way to provide services to industry and offices plus residential. Basically, the reason why the mixed use center was selected was it allows for a number of uses to be integrated: commercial, office, residential, and institutional uses. What this allows us to do too from a developer standpoint is kind of make a more tight development, which allows it to be pushed closer toward the roadways, which could allow us to provide additional buffers to the residential on the west side then, versus the typical future land use where it's segregated, you kind of spread out more. This will allow them to put uses on top of each other, commercial, residential, and kind of make a more compact development, which can provide better buffers to the Hidden Lake subdivision on that side. Also, it's going to basically require, the mixed-use center requires more of a focus onto pedestrian access within the development itself, and also working with the adjacent property owner or adjacent properties to try to bring in pedestrian access there, so it's reducing the number of vehicles on the roadway, providing access into the site through walking, biking. And second part, basically, it is also providing a concentration of uses that could serve those areas, such as restaurants, health clubs, places to work, office, personal services. Nearby, as I indicated, basically access off of Willow Run, Yorktown Boulevard, preventing the need to go onto other roadways, Dunlawton, Clyde Morris Boulevard then. So it's kind of put the uses kind of in the general area where that residential is and trying to decrease onto those roadways. As with all applications, when it comes to terms of developing the site plans or subdivisions will be required. Currency will be done at that time. In terms of road network, they will have to, development will have to pay concurrence at that time. We don't know if it's going to be developed now, 10, 15 years from now. But that will be a requirement when it comes in for development then. At this point, we're just looking to change the future land use and no development proposals. Staff is recommending approval of the amendment to the city's future land use map along with the text amendment, policy 5.1.5, and transmittal to the Department of Economic Opportunity and Volusia County Growth Management.
Okay. Chase?
I'm having a harder time than this one than I am the last one. I've already expressed my concerns to you guys. Seems like every decision we're typically faced with is the voting of the lesser of two things that are unwanted, like we kind of had earlier tonight. But right now, I understand both sides of the issue. I understand the concept of trying to shift commercial from Dunlawton into a different area. We're not really shifting though. We're just adding something somewhere else. So I don't see it as taking anything off of anywhere else. I see us as possibly creating another problem somewhere else. As much as I, personally would don't have as much of a problem with it, I have yet to speak to a resident that is in favor of it, and that's who I'm up here to represent. I was out in that neighborhood quite a bit, talking to a lot of folks, and that is a very big concern. But at the end of the day, this might be the right project. I'm not sure it's the right timing. And a wise man once told me that the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. And I think I would like to see solutions made for Williamson and our traffic before something like this. I'd prefer to see this tabled and revisited once we have that area of congestion resolved. And once that area of congestion is resolved, the planning is in place, the funding would be there. I look at it with a whole different mindset then. Right now,
What funding?
This
is a private project.
I'm not talking about the project, I'm talking about Williamson.
Gotcha. I just want to be clear.
Yeah. So that's where I'm having a hard time with right now. It's already, Williamson is incredible as it is right now. I travel on there from Madeline all the time, and it's a bottleneck. And we were just reminded the last couple of weeks when we had 95 closed and just how bad it is in emergency situations. So that's where my hang up is. Like I said, at the end of the day, it might be the right project, but I don't think it's the right timing for that.
We have engaged the county staff at least, basically to start the discussion regarding Williamson, basically fair share projects to start collecting for that widening. As we indicated before, the major component to our widening of Williamson is payment, basically paying for that bridge over I-95 versus the simple widening project then. But we have made those contacts basically to work with them to try to set up a fair share project. So we're able to start paying into that along with our other projects we have in that area, Summer Trees Road and Yorktown Boulevard. That way it gives as development occurs, it can pay toward those projects then.
That's all I have right now, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, again, and I agree, Chase put it very eloquently. Maybe a good project, but is this the time? We're putting a lot on the table with the congested road system, and I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this. Now, I assume this project is just in its infancy.
Yeah, right now we're just establishing future land use and rezoning. There is no proposed projects out there. It's just kind of setting the framework. That way it could be, you know, marketed, they know the parameters they're working from then. So there's no project behind it. And then, you know, there was a similar project on this property, probably in 2006, called the Nautica Lakes Project, which was over about 450 multifamily units and about a 5-acre area of commercial then. That has since expired. That's no longer on the table.
Thank God.
Basically, but we think, you know, basically the future, applying this future land use allows for more creativity in how that development occurs, and basically pulling away from the residential area and kind of being more toward the intersection. So instead of allowing someone to come in with another PUD amendment and go for that, we want to take the opportunity to try to basically make a, you know, more of a stance on this one to kind of direct development in the future, because we do anticipate this not being something within, you know, a year or so, if, you know, down the road, and setting that framework up then.
Because we also, Yorktown is far from a certainty at this point. You know, it's been discussed, we've talked about it a lot, but I don't see a lot of money to complete it at this point. I basically have no trouble with the concept. I have trouble with the timing, and basically what you're telling me is timing is not of the essence right now. This is just a future plan for the development of this land.
The one kind of point why we tried to bring them together at the kind of the same timing is that, you know, we had the one project now where we basically had given up the residential is allowed to go and replacing the commercial. And since it's kind of basically trying to maintain some of our existing commercial there, we thought that basically tying those two together there versus bringing this forward 3 years from now and trying to say, remember when we changed this, you know, commercial to the apartment complex, we're just trying to repurpose some of that commercial onto these intersections, explain that then. So the intent was to kind of, since the projects went together then, in terms of repositioning there, is why we were bringing them together at this time then.
It does make sense to keep, commercial is key for the city's tax base. And one of the problems we have with this city is our commercial, our business tax base is getting a lot better, but it still has a ways to go. So, you know, that part of this project I'm positive, and the other reason why commercial is good is it provides jobs, you know, and we do need them. So
somebody said jobs in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Scott?
So it's basically a rebalancing of the commercial and residential from what we're dealing with tonight. Is kind of moving it down the corridor, but rebalancing what we had just done earlier. And if I understand the staff recommendation in notes here, between the two, just to reiterate again, between that decision and this decision, staff believes this will actually decrease the amount of trips, peak hour trips, not increase, right?
Yeah, when you're looking at both.
Okay.
Holistically.
Combined.
Right, holistically.
Yeah.
Okay. And this helps to rebalance our commercial stuff, which I agree with Bob. I think it would be foolish for us to just throw the commercial properties to the wind, and as if they don't hold substantial value in our community, because they certainly do in a lot of ways. So I don't have any other questions.
Drew?
No, I don't have anything on this one. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I know this is kind of tied to extending Yorktown, and the one there's nothing perfect about that, but I mean, we've been looking at extending Yorktown as part of our overall a component of our overall traffic improvement plan, but just looking at some of the things that does help that neighborhood is if you take Yorktown out and around, it takes a lot of cars that cut through Chardonnay and a lot of cars that cut through Hidden Lakes in neighborhoods out of those neighborhoods. So I do like that aspect of this. When we see site plans come forward, I do want to look for to make sure that we have the proper ecological mitigation in place, but we've got a lot of that required by law now. But, of course, you know, it's up to us to make sure that we execute on that. But Bob was the first to mention, and he's right. Basically, you want to try to maintain a 2/3, 1/3 balance on your tax base. And if, particularly in the worst of times, if you look at Deltona, talk about a bedroom community, and when the economy tanked, it was the hardest hit. you know, and you know they've rebounded and they're coming out of that, but they're trying to come out of that by developing a commercial at the same time, and they're playing catch up, which I think they're doing a decent job of, but it horribly impacted them. So yeah, anytime that we do something residential, we want to make sure that it's in the proper balance, and I certainly like the idea of the potential, whether it's next week, next month, next year, or 10 years from now, that this has the potential to generate revenue, generate improvements, the intersections there, and you know, take a handful of cars off Dunlawton anyway. Other comments?
Car will count.
Anybody else here like to speak to this? Come on, Robert.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive. I listened to Tim's presentation, and I have no idea what's going on. He portrayed a very blank screen, sort of. I don't know what it's currently zoned as, you know, in terms of commercial versus anything else, or the residential or the apartments. And he didn't show the, you know, what it was or what it is and what it's going to become. And since there's no hurry, you know, I would recommend you, like somebody said, tabling the whole thing. No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? And who are you again?
Mr. Mayor, my name is Dwight Durant. I'm with Zev Cohen & Associates. I'm not sure if this is the time we should speak, because we're really not applicants on it, but I'm here representing the landowner. The city of Port Orange has worked with the Carrassi family for, I don't know, ever since I've been working in this area, which is 32 years. I'm sorry. You good? You know, the city approached the Carrassi family about this particular property for the extension of Yorktown Boulevard. And as the engineer of record for the design of Yorktown Boulevard in the two sections before the crash of the economy, I know a little bit about it. And since that time, through the due diligence of the city, they've come and they've asked, they want to shift it a little bit. And we took a look at it. And through the goodness of the Carrassi family, they've agreed to enter into a roadway agreement to provide the right-of-way and the retention to serve that road. And they will require their developer to build the road if it's not built at the time. But in the meantime, if the city, if we go through this half-cent gas tax or sales tax and it gets put up there and this road can be built, you reserve the right-of-way through this process. So when you're moving the road, when we're moving it to where the retention and the road, you'll have the retention on the east side, and then you'll have the road, which will protect the residents further to the east, versus having what you approved before, apartment complexes that are there. I've got a whole list of advantages that I'd love to go through with you, and if you want to go through the time, and it helps the residents, it helps the city. It helps the school, and to your point, it takes the traffic and puts the traffic where it should be on collectors and arterials for pass-through traffic. And one thing that Tim didn't mention, but I think he was trying to allude to, is if Yorktown is put in there, and this property, this is the only place for it to go, will significantly reduce the traffic on Williamson Boulevard. Because you've got an alternate route now. You know, that's just common sense. You put a parallel route on this side of the roadway, or this side of I-95, and that occurs. So where this came about was this road was originally a county thoroughfare road. It wasn't even a city. And the city wanted to get it built, so we went to the county, and it was going to be paid for by traffic impact fees when we had the Nautical Lakes project. Well, it's been taken off the county thoroughfare plan because it's more of a city road, and now either it has to be built with private funds or city funds. The intentions have not changed. Carrassis have been very, very astute in that regard by requiring the developers to pay their way by way of stormwater, utilities, and traffic. And you don't even see that part that goes into their contract. So none of that part has changed, but what has changed is the ability for you guys to secure your right-of-way, because the county is not securing the right-of-way now. So when this occurs, you end up with different use for that property, and it's surrounded by I-95, a collector and an arterial. And nobody's going to live there, maybe. If they are going to live there, you better provide some amenities for them, some mixed use, and that was the reason the city came to us and asked if that was an appropriate use for that place. So when the site plan comes, all these buffers and everything will be provided, but we've ensured with the new route that there's 8 acres that will go into right-of-way and retention to separate it from the existing residential. And there's other expert stands here with the traffic, if you have any comments from them. And then Sam Owens is here as well, representing the Crossies, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. But that's
Sam, you want a chance to come up and earn your fee tonight?
Thank you.
I would like to wait.
You gonna wait?
Yes.
Okay.
Until I hear whether there's any opposition, please.
Okay. Well, we can generate some if we need to. Who else would like to speak to this? You know, I've often said that traffic engineers have strange senses of humor and they take it out on the rest of us, but I really shouldn't use that joke considering what you could do to us. So I'll be nice, Sands.
Sands Lassiter, poor comedian and member of Lassiter Transportation Group. Our address is 1450 West Granada Boulevard, Suite 2 in Ormond Beach. Actually, this plan speaks to a long-term solution, which we've discussed for at least 15 years, actually longer than that, I think, which is for the interchange. Right, and it actually does it 2 ways. One is provides an alternate route to the interchange from the north via Williamson and bypassing to the east to Dunlawton, and not having to congest the actual interchange area itself. The second thing it does is this reduction in retail use that is now shifted up to this area will help capture residential trips at a more neighborhood level of commercial, further away from Dunlawton, further away from the congested portions of Williamson. So to me, it's part of a puzzle. It's part of a larger picture that has been looked at for years by the city, by the county, and by DOT in terms of an ultimate better situation with the interchange and providing a bypass around it. So it's part of a bigger picture, and it's meant to be very much an improvement for the overall flow in the future. So,
appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We certainly have a chance to put our stamp on this whenever it is actually done. But I don't know, council comments, questions?
I think securing the right-of-way is an important factor in this, and also the ability to have much greater distance in that buffer area between the homes and the residential units that have been established there for decades and decades and decades. And I also think that it gives future councils considerable more options with regard to the properties itself. So,
if you take those traffic trips off of Hidden Lakes every day and reduce the number of cars that go through that neighborhood because of the school, because it's a natural cut through, I've done it, whatever the case.
Make it safer.
Do you make it safer? Do you improve the quality of life in that neighborhood? Do you enhance the value of those homes because of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think all things that could happen.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sam, you want to put a bow on it, or are you good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. With that, with no other comments, call the vote.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Tremont?
No.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 4-1.
Good vote.
What's wrong with you, dissenter?
No,
I
not
like it.
dissent.
I like it.
This is the right side of the council.
But you sit on my left.
But I'm on their right.
Which brings up item 21. Ordinance 2018-8. First reading, an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, rezoning property consisting of approximately plus or minus 34.5 acres from planned unit development to mixed-use center, and plus or minus 5 acres from planned unit development to community commercial located at the south side of Willow Run Boulevard, east of Williamson Boulevard, authorizing a revision of the official zoning atlas and providing for an effective date. And go ahead.
Motion to approve ordinance 2018-8.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, and this is kind of a continuation of the prior discussion.
Correct. Tim Berman, Community Development. This is basically establishing the zoning on the property. Currently, the property is all PUD, but does not have an active master development agreement or concept plan. What this request is to rezone from PUD to the mixed-use center for 34.5 acres and community commercial for 5 acres, consistent with the proposed future land use or the existing future land use on the property. Then, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning request.
The question was raised by a citizen. What's it zone? What can it be used for now under current zoning, and what would it be able to be used for under future zoning if we do?
Basically, the currently zoned right now is PUD without a master development agreement. So, property owner would have to come in and propose a master development agreement establishing a set of uses. Most likely, it would be a combination of about 326 residential units and some limited amount of commercial on that property. Then would be what could be proposed, and they could try to, make all kinds of requests on that point then. So that's kind of the current zoning on the place. And in the current future land use as it sits right now, on basically the 34.5 acres is just for various densities of residential. High density up to 16 units per acre, medium up to 8 units per acre, and 2 to 4 units per acre at the south end. So there's a variety of densities of residential there. And there's also a small area of existing commercial future land use on the property as it stands today.
Okay. What kind of commercial uses?
That's more the community commercial that you're looking at, your restaurants, your retail stores, kind of basically the typical stuff you see along Dunlawton, Nova Road, those community style commercials, grocery stores, personal services would be in that area then.
Drew, you could get that pizza place there that you've been wanting to.
They gotta wanna come here.
So, but the proposed future land
Anthony's,
use,
if you're watching,
rezoning would encourage more office uses, more job opportunity types of uses, and also those commercial uses where you want to basically attract people to go to for food, personal services, stuff like that. Then.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody else like to speak to this? Being none, call the roll.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Tremont?
No.
Councilman Bastian?
yes.
Vice Mayor Phillips?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 4-1. Which, at 20 minutes to 10, brings us to the regular agenda. Item 22, first reading of ordinance number 2018-9, local communication service tax. An ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 66 relating to taxation by repealing and replacing Section 66-2 relating to public service tax on telecommunications, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance 2018-9.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Alan, you want to tell us what this is all about?
I'll pass it on over the other side of the dais to the city attorney.
Okay.
Council members, this is a modification to bring this ordinance in line with the current statutory parameters for the communication services tax. You see those minimal changes that are occurring for the percentage of revenue we receive. And of course you see the other parts of an older ordinance that are being deleted. So this is somewhat of a cleanup ordinance for you.
Questions, council? Bob?
No.
Chase?
Nope.
Scott? Nope. Drew?
Nothing.
We're on a roll. Anybody else like to speak to this? Being none, call the roll.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Tremont?
Yes.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes. That was 5-0. Is that the first 5-0 tonight?
Nope.
Or at least it's
No,
been a
I don't
while. That brings us to item 23, contract discussions for charter officers. We'd requested this be put on the agenda tonight, and in doing so, there are two separate questions here. Generally, I like to discuss compensation separately from your annual review. In Jake's case, we did his annual review, and now we can discuss compensation with him. In Margaret's case, last year when we did your review, we were also in the midst of contract negotiations with 3 unions, and I think we all felt it inappropriate to be talking compensation until we took care of the people on the ground first. I also want to kind of lay it out as I think they're both charter officers are separate situations. Jake's been here about 2.5 years. Margaret's been here a significant number of years without any kind of wage adjustment. So I'm kind of looking at Jake's situation, me personally, is what do we deserve to do or not do for him based on his service over the last year and moving forward. But Margaret, this is me, and we all may have different opinions and we'll chime in. I'm kind of thinking of, okay, you know, it's been a while since we've done something for you, and I think we should frame the 2 conversations separately. And I know you wanted to say something before we started to talk about you behind your back.
Just briefly, I want to thank you for considering this tonight, and I want to thank you for the resources you provide to the City Attorney's Office that enables us to provide you some quality staff and some good legal response to the organization. I could not perform and provide that response without the support of that staff, so that comes from you as the funding resource. So I appreciate that. I'll try and answer any of your questions that you may have tonight.
Okay. Why don't we start with you, Scott?
How long has it been, Margaret, since you had a wage adjustment?
Each October, I parallel whatever your adjustment is for other staff members. A few years ago, I think the council endeavored and through those negotiations to do a number of alignments that resulted in wage adjustments for what was called time and grade. That was the item that council considered and wanted to wait until contract negotiations were completed. I've been in time with you for 18 years, so it was a pretty significant adjustment. I recognize that, you know, we do things in moderation in the city, and I respect that. So your consideration of what would be appropriate and how you want to proceed, I'll certainly honor it.
But about how long has it been since there's been like a time and grades type of adjustment?
Oh, I would say before the Great Depression. To be honest with you,
Okay.
I mean, we have bottomed there
Well,
for
let's
a
put
while.
it this way. Bob and I have been here since the end of 2010. I don't think we've had this conversation.
No.
I don't recall it, do you?
No.
So it predates that.
Okay.
8 to 10 years.
Drew?
You're absolutely right. We kind of deemed it was inappropriate to discuss this until the other groups were, you know, we settled 3 labor contracts and everything, and you know, I don't know that we did enough for them. You know, in looking at it, I think the average raise was roughly 3.5, maybe 3.6 something.
3.6, yeah.
3.64, somewhere around there, and it's just hard to put a price on what you do, and you know, your dedication. You have 18 years here, so it's difficult to do that, and you kind of have gotten shut out for a while, and you know, various groups did as well. They also have been shut out. You know, in the rough times back then, there were no raises and people weren't getting compensated, and it still aren't getting
Wasn't just the city
compensated.
of Port Orange. That was
every town USA. So since we're discussing more, there's got to be a way we can somehow incorporate either pay for performance type of nomenclature or something in here, or just mirror what the average raises were. If somebody gets, you know, if the average raises citywide are 3.5 or 5.5 or 8.5 or whatever they are, mirror that and then get it.
Yeah, you see,
but get it.
This is up to us.
We can
They
still
work
say
for us.
we can still say yes or no to that type of agreement.
There's one other way to think about it, and sometimes the base has a stacking, I will say, when the base increases, the contributions.
Yeah, all that comes
Otherwise,
up.
the employment taxes, everything goes up. Council members, I'm at the stage in my life where savings is what's important to me, and anything I can do to boost that won't necessarily increase the base if we structure it that way. And we can, you know, be conservative in that way, kind of get me a little better position. One of these days I'll be retiring.
I think as a general practice moving forward, whenever we do a performance review on either of the two charter officers, we, as a standard practice, and I know Robin's listening to this, the agenda 30 days later should include this conversation so that we can have it, and so we can have the actual conversation. And if we're in the midst of something that requires us to delay it, then great, but we'll have that conversation. I don't think anything should ever be automatic, but at the same time, I don't want to neglect good people who work for me, and I don't care what department they're in. Chase?
No, I'm of the same opinion. It just feels inappropriate to talk about a person's salary in the public, and that's the
It
hard,
very much is, but that's our
That's the
job.
hard part. Yeah, it is what it is. But you know, I want to take care of our employees, you know, and do what we have to do within reason. So I'm amenable to whatever suggestions and dialogue that we have.
Bob?
Okay, as I understand it, Margaret has basically got the same increase that our employees have gotten each year. Am I correct?
No, she didn't get it though.
Got a 3%, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, each year, the charter officers are getting what we give our regular employees.
The time and grade.
Hmm?
The
Not time and grade COLAs.
COLA.
COLA, yeah.
But just like your other,
I don't even know what your base salary is, so I don't know what
I can provide
gets
you
paid,
that.
so and you don't need to tell me in public. But, you know, I don't even know what it is, so it's a hard conversation for me to have. What we're talking about, in addition to the 3% per year or the COLA we've been giving every one of our regular employees, my general sense is we're all in the same boat together, or the employees and charter officers. And the rate of increase should be approximately the same, unless there's some extraordinary reason
well,
to
I
think
that
otherwise.
the thing that's happening to the city, and I think it's applicable to myself as well as your manager. You want to remain competitive in the marketplace. I do not want to see the manager removed from the city. When I say removed, attracted away. Now, I don't think he has any intents of going anywhere. I think he's very happy in Port Orange. But if you don't allow your rates to remain competitive, then that's one of the risk factors.
Well, I don't know what competitive is.
Well,
I will talk to administrative services and ask them to give me some information. But tonight I feel it's a very difficult decision, and you know.
Well, this is a can that we've been kicking down the road for almost 2 years.
Okay, well,
now,
but
Why we agended it.
Yeah.
But we agended it without getting, you know, I wish we had put together the information resources that would be, and I think we can agenda it again with, I would like to know the current salary, you know, and I'd like to see some, I don't know what the competitive salaries are. And then on the other hand, you know, I have to make a decision as to, you know, I know, for example, Frank Dummy made a absolutely huge salary, which, you know, I'm not prepared to go in that direction.
I think we would have to, I don't know, what's that, 70 or 80% jump to get to that?
To put it mildly, I assume. But I would really need some additional information to get it, you know.
And here's something else to think about. You know, we did not, I don't believe any increase for Jake was in the budget for this fiscal year.
Did he get 3%?
Mayor?
No,
No,
he didn't.
no,
Just-
no, and there's no raise budgeted, but I believe there was something budgeted for you
Yes.
that you did not get.
We have budgeted a couple years running now.
Yeah, and so, like,
But, okay, then clarify. You said you were getting the same rate, the 3% or whatever the average employee was getting, the non-union people, right? You got that.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what you're saying is above and beyond that, should we consider a time and grade an additional catch-up monies to bring you to a level that you feel is competitive?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is falling far behind the competitive rates. We are, for my experience, it is not competitive.
Okay, I'll
looks
tell
like
you what, let me make a suggestion. Can you provide us your salary history, your annual salary history for the last 7 years?
Sure.
And the annual salary for the city attorneys of Daytona Beach, Ormond, and New Smyrna?
Sure.
Are there any others that you guys want to include in that list?
Daytona, Ormond, New
I think
Smyrna.
Ormond,
DeLand.
DeLand would be another good
I
one.
think that would be a good one.
DeLand in-house, though. I think
I'm
they're
not
Oh, they're
sure.
contract.
they contract, you're
Yeah.
right. They
Yep.
contract.
Deltona contracts.
Yeah, they're, yeah,
South Daytona, yeah.
comparable size.
And I don't want to reach too far out to Volusia
Yeah.
County,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's outside our market. This is our market.
Understood. I'll be happy to give you that.
Can
And it
you,
doesn't look like we've adjusted the base since 2001.
and that's probably correct, but let's take a look at that information, and I would entertain a motion to table this until the, whatever the first meeting in May
Move we
is.
table it until we have that information.
Second.
There's still the other side of that coin to discuss, so you can't table, I don't know if you want to table the whole thing.
No, we're tabling the city
Margaret.
attorney's salary discussion.
Let's,
Am
yeah.
I getting your,
Yes.
that's the motion, right?
Yes.
Council, I have your direction. You don't have to act on it tonight. You can,
Okay.
you know,
So I have
defer
a
it for further consideration.
Motion to table to the first meeting in May, the city attorney's salary discussion. And I know you want to chime in, and I'll allow you to do that right now.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the city manager, I know you're going to discuss that next, does not have the same provision of this contract, does not get an increase every year, and has not
Correct.
since
We'll
he
talk
began.
about that here in a second.
And then the other thing I did want to mention is, you know, we've been having discussions for the last number of years, you know, how we kind of do right by our staff and how we keep within the framework of where everybody else is so we attract good staff. And two of those devices we've used in the past is readjusting, you know, the salary ranges and the time and grade to get the people within the range that they need to be so we don't bleed employees. And I think that's kind of, you know, the other issue with Margaret is, and I'm not for or against anything here, just, you know, bring this to light, is that we've done that with other staff where they have been getting raises in some years and haven't in others, maybe 3%, 2%, or 0%, but then there comes that time for adjustment where that whole range is below where it is for the market, and that's the part we look
That's
at.
kind of what we've gone through the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Adjusting
but
a lot of those
let me
bases.
suggest, I am not prepared to make huge expenditures. Sometimes the market can be out of whack itself. I mean, you know,
I'm
there
just
has to be a
asking for-
reasonableness to this whole thing.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at the numbers, and
Yeah.
then we'll take action once we've had a chance to digest that.
Sure.
We have a motion to table the city attorney's conversation in the first meeting in May. Call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Steltner.
No.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. The conversation about, and this is why it's important to keep both conversations separate, because, well, let's face it, they are two different jobs, two different contracts. As Alan alluded to, Jake does not have any kind of provision in there to adjust accordingly. And I think, was Scott or Drew, you said it, that whoever said it, we're not in the budget this year, so
Yeah, it's not.
if you want to do something, I don't mind.
Let's put it in the budget for October.
We can approve it for effective October 1st.
Yeah.
But, I mean, gentlemen, what do you guys want to do with that one?
Whatever it is, should be October 1st, so we don't have to scrounge around the budget.
And I think we have a consensus on that.
Yeah.
What do you think about a number there? I don't think you push more than 3.6, and I'd rather be a little bit more conservative with that myself. I don't.
What did the employees get?
3.64.
The average was 3.6 between all the 3.62 or something like that between all the labor contracts. Am I right? Thank you.
That's where my level of comfort lies.
I would not have a problem with an increase that, was the same as the employees got, yes. Now, it's going to be a lot larger because it's a bigger base.
But I mean, we're talking about the head of our organization as well.
Correct.
So my comfort level lies on the average and nothing more.
You're talking about 3.6.
Yeah.
Come on up. Me personally, I don't think you need to go to that percentage, because dollar-wise, you're talking about a lot more dollars than everybody else.
You are.
So we can. Me personally, I could see being a little bit below that, but it's up to all of us.
Well, when I say 3.6, it's the same way we address it to the employees. The total. The total thing, not just the salary, the whole compensation. Isn't that how it was figured, as far as benefits and everything else?
3.64% was on base wages.
Hold on a second.
Oh, base wages.
Who are you now?
Jamie Miller, Administrative Services
Okay.
Director. So I just wanted to clarify. You had said 3.62. It was 3.64 was the average wage increase.
And it was base. It wasn't all inclusive.
Base adjustment.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So
That is the base.
that's where I lie.
Okay.
3.5, 3.6, whatever.
I
Thank
got
you
it.
for clarifying, Jamie.
I got schooled there. It wasn't 3.62 after all.
I think I said 6.2, 3.62, but
Okay,
it was
you got schooled.
3.64.
364. Gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion. Since I can't make one. What do you want to do?
Mayor, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to recommend that we hold off on this particular motion. On pure principle, I just don't feel it's the right thing to do to commit to a raise to a city manager who's doing a good job, who's been here 2.5 years, when we've got a city attorney, and we've kicked this can down the road for as long as the city manager's been here. I just think on pure principle alone, that's the wrong thing to do. And I think we should hold off, especially
Knowing
since...
what we know, knowing what we've talked about, if you want to make a motion to do the same thing,
Sure,
I'll entertain it.
and I do like what the discussion has been, that we're talking about committing to something that's going to be in the future budget. So making that commitment tonight is not of urgency, and so I would just...
I appreciate your ethics on that.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we hold off further on that discussion, pending the decision that we're going to make here on the city attorney's wages.
Second. So you want to take that discussion and have it after the city attorney's?
I'd like to table them both, and I'd like to
Table them
take care of
both
the
the
city
same
attorneys
meeting?
first.
Okay.
It's reasonable.
That's
Sure.
a motion, and Chase, I have a second. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. It's official. You guys get nothing tonight. After all this time, you think it was going to be easy. You know it wasn't going to be. Item 24, city attorney comments.
Nothing further this evening.
Thank you. Item 25, city manager comments. Is it an Alan Rosen sighting?
Yeah, you know how much I hate public speaking, so here I go. Just wanted to bring to your attention, we had a project ongoing that you know of very well, the Cambridge Canal Bank hardening. Phase 3 was the final phase. We completed it, or the contractor completed it about 15 days ahead of schedule and slightly under budget. The project ended with a balance of $3,678. Due to a couple of things, there was one of the things in the project where we thought we were going to have to relocate an FPL pole. We didn't have to. We didn't run into any unsuitable materials. However, we also had to use an additional 774 square feet of sod from what we thought about in the original plans. But and again, the overall deductive change order, if we go that way, is $3,678. So since this project finished early, it's under budget, we'd like to get the contractor paid, but there's something standing in our way. In our policy 1-23, final payments on construction projects, it indicates that if there's either an additive or deductive final contract change order, then an agenda has to be prepared by the department and prepared for council for approval. So obviously we do that, we're another 3 or 4 weeks down the road. Staff would like council to vote on waiving this requirement in this instance, obtain council's approval tonight to cut the final check and approve the deductive change order. Just in addition to that, there was no change in scope or time, just deductive cost. So.
Deductive cost.
Deductive.
Yeah.
Came in under budget.
So we saved money and
And it was done early.
Done early.
And we'd like to cut the check, but we.
Well, yeah.
And why didn't it just come as an item tonight?
Because we didn't have time to prepare anything for this agenda. This agenda has to be completed 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Well,
So it was
you can
still
always
on.
put them in the city manager can always waive and put it in.
I think kind of that's what Alan's doing.
Yeah.
A little backup comment with the prior email could have been.
I'm certainly not opposed to this, but I'm opposed to how we're doing it. It's very hard at the end of a meeting to try and understand what exactly you're saying with no paperwork, okay? That's all. So, and I'll vote for it. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Yeah. Give it to Scott.
Yeah, Motion and a second to approve. In regards to that, I don't want this to be a standard practice because change orders need to be given due consideration. But in this case, the contractor did the work. He came in under budget. He finished early. It's important for flood control in the city. He deserves to be paid.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to make him wait for our red tape.
Yeah,
I almost think we should incentivize contractors.
Yeah,
If you come in under budget and you get it done quicker than the allotted time,
you get your check quicker.
Yeah.
Don't have a disagreement. It just should have come to us through.
I understand.
formal
I understand.
channels.
Any other comments on this? Anybody else like to speak to this? If not, call the roll.
Councilman Ford.
Yes.
Councilman Tremont.
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Anything else, Alan?
No, sir.
Alan, appreciate you sitting in for Jake tonight. We miss him. Jake, if you're listening, I hope all is well, and we'll see you when you return. Council committee reports. Art House.
Art House is preparing for its fun and funky dinner, and and I urge, it's going to be June 6th. You'll all be getting invitations and like. It's a fun evening, and the honoree is Dorothy Euclid.
All right.
Nice.
So we're looking forward to a good event, and again, it's one of their primary fundraisers that keeps the organization afloat.
Bob, if you can you send some information to us on that? I've tried for a couple of years to
send.
get to one of these and just haven't had a chance.
Okay,
and
we'll
I'd like
send
to
you
try
one.
to
I'll send you a picture.
do that.
Port Orange South Daytona Chamber. This Thursday is the Chamber After Hours. It's being hosted by Cardwell, Baggett, and Summers Funeral Home. It's on Ridgewood in South Daytona, where the Sunoco is. The former Sunshine State Bank is now a funeral home, and they are just dying to see people come.
Wow.
Somebody had to tell that joke, right?
Wow.
And it had to be me. The next morning Mix and Mingle is going to be held at Sam's Club, May 4th, Monday from 8 to 9. And that takes care of the chamber. They are, just want to mention, our proud sponsors, or I should say co-sponsors of Riverfest, coming up May 4th, 5, and 6. Everybody mark their calendars. That should be a terrific weekend in Riverwalk Park. in the River District.
I'm
Counsel?
gonna go walk down to it.
Yes, you can. I'm going to bike down to it. Anything else come before us this evening?
Yes. And I'd feel bad if we didn't mention this tonight, Mayor, so if you'll indulge me 30 quick seconds. I just want to put on the record and let everybody know that we had an organization, Building Homes for Heroes, last week, who did something that I thought was just really remarkable in our community. And this is an organization that has been able to award about 960 homes to disabled military veterans across the United States in partnership with Chase Bank and other organizations. And for the first time in Volusia County, one of these homes was awarded to Army Sergeant Stephen Pyle, and it happened to be that it was awarded in the city of Port Orange. And they took a home that has been a code enforcement issue for quite some time that was in foreclosure, and Chase Bank awarded the home to the organization, which in turn awarded this to Army Sergeant Stephen Pyle and his family of 8 children. And yeah, so just
It's a big house, I hope.
Right? I just want to publicly say thank you for your service, Sergeant Pyle, and welcome home and welcome to Port Orange, and we're glad to have you. And what a great organization and event it was. It was really something neat to behold, and so I hope it's a great program. I'd love to see more of those kind of things in our community.
So they take
Really.
a zombie house or whatever, lack of a better term, if you will, redo it, refurbish it, and
Yep.
gift it or give it to a deserving. That's
Right,
awesome.
and
That's
they're a nonprofit organization, but that are supported by a lot of private sector companies. Chase Bank is one of their
Okay.
huge contributors, and this particular home was a foreclosure that Chase Bank had, and it was one that they decided that they would go ahead and donate to the organization, and then through the donations of other group of private sectors and personal donations, they basically refurbished the house, painted, new carpet, all that kind of stuff, bring it up to code. They did a nice job on the property itself. It's down off of Spruce Creek in the I think it's the Treetop subdivision there, and they did a really nice job. So
Cool.
I
Good
want to
stuff.
say thanks for that.
That is definitely worth taking more than 30 seconds after.
Right?
After what
Feel
has
good.
been
More
the,
like 79, but who's counting?
Hey, if we're going to have the longest meeting we've had in a long
Gotta wrap it
time,
up on a good note.
Let's finish it on excellent news like that.
Good.
Very good stuff. With that, everybody have a good evening. Thank
Good
you.
night.